Greetings.
Hello.
Salutations.
I ran out of words for hello.
Damn it, Mark. Welcome to the Mathom House podcast. I'm Mitchell and Mark. Both of them at the same time.
You did that again.
Oh, hi, Mark. Head thumbs up if anybody listening gets that reference.
Dustin?
Stephanie will.
Oh, okay.
Shout out to Stephanie and Dustin. Name dropping. Oh.
Anyway.
So before we get started, I got some boring stuff that I think is entertaining. You're listening to us on YouTube right now. There's a button. It says subscribe. Click it. You could subscribe to us. I'm not sure how YouTube subscriptions work. It's been explained to me before. Not 100% positive. But I know that you should hit the button. Hit the bell. That means it will go doodle-doo when it comes when we post a video.
It should send you an email when we post a new episode.
Yeah, so you love new episodes as much as we love making them. We also have a Facebook page, Mathom House Podcast. Facebook.com. Give us a like. We like being liked. We like you, so you should like us. We also have an email account, mathomhousepod@gmail.com. We got one email. It was a good email. We responded.
Wait, who was it? Who was it from?
Stephanie.
Oh,
she said hi.
aw.
So,
Hi, Stephanie.
So you say hi to us. Tell us you like us. Tell us we suck. I like constructive criticism. I also enjoy when people give us ideas for podcasts in the future.
Like Stephanie did.
Yeah, so if you have an idea, you want us to talk about it, and if we think we can talk about it for at least 40 minutes, we will talk about it. So do that. But Mark,
Yes.
we're making a podcast right now.
Totally we are.
7:30 on a Friday night.
Friday night.
What are we talking about today?
Well, we have two topics. One, we have John Quincy Adams.
JQA for those paying attention
For the
at
cool
home.
kids.
Yeah, like you.
Yeah. And then the other topic is Super Mario Odyssey.
Super Mario Odyssey. Ba, 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 bum, 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 bum.
Are you going to do the whole number? I think Nintendo would come after us if we played the whole song.
I mean, I think we're small enough where we can get away with it.
Slide under, completely irrelevant to slide under the legal radar.
We're also not making any money off of this.
That's also very true.
So since we're not making money, they can't.
Well, and since we bought the equipment, we've actually lost money on it.
Yes, we have actually lost. That's kind of sad to put it that way. Oh, man. I'm depressed now. Take a sip of coffee.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Mark, you want to roll the dice?
I will roll the
Explain
dice.
to the people what the dice mean.
The dice is for choosing to see of whose topic goes first. So Mitchell's topic is Mario. Mine is JQA. And basically we work it out so that my birthday is an even day of the week.
Month of May.
Month of May. And Mitchell's is an odd number.
Of the month of May.
Right. So I'm going to roll the die, and that will determine who goes first.
Roll
All right,
it.
Off we go. It is a
3.
3.
That's odd. Why does mine always go first?
Yeah, it's been you every single time.
I'm okay with that. So we're gonna talk about the new Mario Odyssey game. It's for the Nintendo Switch.
It came out in October.
Did it come out in October?
I believe so.
I don't know when it came out. I got my Switch in November, so that's
Well, me too.
where I'm at.
But it came out in October.
Great game.
Really good game.
It's one of my favorite Mario games.
Yeah, and actually that's a good point. What is your favorite Mario game?
Ooh.
Like setting aside Odyssey.
Okay. I honestly haven't played that much Mario. I never played it as a kid. Within the past
I'm shaking my head at you.
Yeah, I was like a Pokemon kid.
Yeah.
So within the past maybe 5 years, I've gotten into Mario.
Okay.
I like Paper Mario games a lot.
All right.
There's a Paper Mario on 3DS, Paper Mario Sticker Star. You don't have a 3DS?
No, I don't.
That's a good one. I really liked. I played a little bit of Sunshine as a kid. Oh. I never owned it, but I would get it from the video store, and that was always a good time.
Well, I mean, I would say Sunshine is my favorite Mario game, and it's probably tied for third for my favorite video games of all time.
Really?
Yeah. It's way up there. It's amazing.
Does Mario Kart count as main Mario?
No, that's like periphery. That's like Mario Party.
I love me some Mario Kart.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Me and Steph get really heated with Mario Kart.
Who does she play as?
Herself.
Oh, okay.
She does the me.
She plays as a me. Okay.
I play as the villager.
Aw.
Or the kid from Splatoon.
Okay. I was thinking Waluigi for some reason.
Why would she play as Waluigi?
No, you.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
Waluigi.
Well, he's tall and lanky, kind of like you.
Mario Odyssey Galaxy was good.
Yeah, I played the first Mario Galaxy, but not the second.
I played more of the second one, actually.
Oh.
Because
Okay.
that's the one I had. Oh. Mario 3D Land. Wii
Yes,
U.
yeah, that's a good
Damn,
game.
that was a sick game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are good.
But I could just list Mario games off all day. Luigi's Mansion.
See,
so
that's
good.
also one of my tied for third for best.
I would
video game.
consider that a Mario game.
Yeah,
The one on the 3DS was actually way better than the one on the.
that's like the
GameCube.
one reason I would buy a 3DS is so I could play.
You
that.
know, you could borrow my DS and play it if you want to.
Borrow/steal.
Yeah, if you want to borrow my DS to play it, I would. The library has it. We'll work it out.
Okay,
We'll work it out off camera.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. So, Mark, your favorite Mario games?
Well, definitely Sunshine, and then probably Super Mario World for Super Nintendo.
Oh, I forgot about World. See, I wasn't even born when Mario World came out.
God, you're so young.
I did get a ROM of it and I played through it. That was a really good one too.
Yeah, I mean, just having the cape and flying and being on Yoshi and all that, like so many good memories.
Would you consider Yoshi's Island a Mario game?
Yeah, it's a Mario game.
Yoshi's Island DS is really good.
Yeah.
Or the 3DS one.
I mean, it's not a main Mario title, but it's within the Mario family.
I would call it a Mario game.
You're a Mario game.
Your mom's a Mario game.
Hey.
Actually, no, your mom's a delightful lady.
Well, Mario games are delightful, so.
There you go. That should be a compliment to your mom then.
Should be.
Shout out to Mark's mom.
But anyway,
Yeah.
so Mitchell, tell us a little bit about what, because like for instance,
We never did your 3 favorite games. I kind of interrupted you and got excited.
No, it's okay. I mean, it's pretty much Mario Sunshine is my favorite Mario game. But like every Mario game always adds a couple new elements. Like for instance, in Super Mario 64, it was the Game changer. I mean, that was the first really successful 3D game. Like that sort of set the standard. Just like how the first original Super Mario game set the standard for 2D platformers. But then, like, when you go to Galaxy, sort of its gimmick was the changing of gravity and flying through space and different things like that.
Just showing what the Wii could do.
Right. And then Sunshine, its sort of gimmick was that Mario was teamed up with a water pack, and you could do that to hover or to clear off enemies and, like, clean off paint, because that was part of the whole point of the game.
On Isle Delfino?
Yeah, on Isle Delfino.
I remember that.
Yeah. But... so tell us what the sort of gimmick of Mario Odyssey is.
So Mario's hat is alive. His name is Cappy. He's like one of the cat creatures from the Cat Kingdom. Bowser, the bad guy in Mario, steals Cappy's girlfriend, which is sad. And he also steals Mario's girlfriend, Peach, which is also sad. So they have a common interest. They team up to save their ladies. It's cool. The hat is a really good dynamic, I thought.
It is. And sorry, go ahead.
The hat creatures are adorable too.
They kind of are. Yeah.
Like in post game, like you go into the different worlds and there's like quests like find the cat creatures. One of them said, "My friend is lost. He's got the brains of a beanie,"
which I'm assuming in the hat world is an insult.
I mean, I wear beanies all the time though, so that does prove that it's an insult.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
But I'd say the other part of it is the reason it's called Odyssey is that you travel on this giant sort of like dirigible
top hat shaped airship.
Yeah, and you fly around to different worlds. So like for instance, the first world you go to is a world populated by sentient hats.
That's actually one of my favorite worlds.
Yeah, that's what you were saying. And then some levels it's like a prehistoric sort of dinosaur world.
Did you get to the part where you could control the dinosaur in that world?
Well, of course I did. And I liked that one a lot.
Yeah, I knew you would.
And like there's like a mermaid world. There is a world, like a beach world.
Yeah, where all the water's carbonated in that world.
Yeah, it made me really want like a drink.
I drank a lot of seltzer water while I played that.
Yeah, and like even the controller would jiggle a little bit because of like the fizzy water.
Yeah. That's actually one of the cool things about the Wii, or not Wii U, the Switch is the 3D Rumble, or whatever they're calling it. Mm-hmm. HD Rumble is what they're calling it.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty sensitive.
Yeah.
And then another one is sort of like a 1940s, 1950s New York City style skate.
New Donk City.
Yeah.
Fun fact, the Mayor Pauline, was was the girl in the first Donkey Kong game.
Yeah. princess that Mario ever tried to rescue.
Yeah, it didn't work out between them, though.
Apparently not.
I think she went on to better things than Mario did.
I mean, Mario has a thing for political leaders. I mean, Princess Peach
That's true.
And Mayor Pauline. I mean,
He's a trophy husband.
he kind of is. He's the blue collar guy.
It's a me, a trophy husband, a Mario. I don't want to work. I'm a plumber, but I don't do no jobs.
I mean, he cleans out the pipes.
I guess of like the Goombas.
Yeah.
He wastes a lot of time though.
Kind of true, yeah. But then tell us about what Cappy can do.
So Cappy, he's like a sentient hat. So you can like do all these different cap throwings. You can like jump off of his hat. But I know that's not what you're referring to. With Cappy, he can also control all the different monsters in the world. Like if you find a Goomba, you can be the Goomba. There's the part where you can hijack a dinosaur and you are the dinosaur. You can do that a few times, actually.
Yep, in several parts.
Yeah, in New Donk City, you can do that, too.
Oh, yeah.
Do you do that part?
Yeah, I think I've done that.
Dude,
already.
that's another cool part about Odyssey is that it's not really linear.
No, and there's always new areas to explore.
Yeah, so like you go to the different worlds. You have to get X amount of stars to be able to proceed. But you could get them however you wanted to. You could be a dumbass and buy them. I did that once.
Oh.
It was for that mysterious kingdom.
Oh, okay.
I just got sick of it, so I bought the 10-star.
I can see that.
Yeah, I had enough coins. It was worth it. Yeah, lots of different things to do.
Well, like, and some of the examples are really neat. Like, for instance, when you take over a Goomba, sometimes what you need to do is jump on to other Goombas, and so you create this giant Goomba tower.
Like, yeah, you stack them up.
Yeah, and you can use it to, like, activate certain switches or jump up on top of certain walls.
Or like, get the attention of the Lady Goomba.
True, the Lady Goomba with like the Red Hat Lady Society hat.
Yes.
Yeah. And I also like another good thing about being a Goomba is that they don't slide on ice.
Yeah, that was a really cool idea that they did.
Yeah, and other ones are like you take over a flying skeleton kind of creature, and so you get to fly over lava.
There's the part when you were in the snow world and you had to take control of like the big Yeti ball and race him.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's all sorts of different things, and yeah, as you said, you can use him to knock out enemies or use it to increase your jump height. So Cappy is really, really. Oh, also you can take over a taxi.
Yes, you can. You can take over remote control cars.
Yep.
There's a lot you can do. I like my favorite part was taking over the Hammer Bros.
Oh yeah,
I've always wanted to take over. I was always wanted to play as a Hammer Bro. I got my chance.
Well, and what's neat about the Hammer Bro is that there are certain blocks that only the Hammer Bros can break. And so sometimes you need to hack out a wall to make stairs so that you can climb up to certain areas, or knock out a wall so that you can get to a secret door. So there's it's kind of amazing of how many different things they thought of to use for that takeover ability.
They did such a good job with that game.
Yeah, I mean, you can just tell that Team Mario, or whatever the team that develops it is called, you figured that they just sort of sit around and come up with crazy ideas right on a giant whiteboard, and whatever sort of makes them smile the most is what gets in the game.
Yeah,
because you're just like smiling like a
oh my god, I felt like
a fool
I was,
when you're playing.
I felt like I was 5.
Yeah,
I saw the big thing about the Switch is that it's portable. I brought it to work with me one day to play on my lunch break. I was playing. One of my coworkers walked up. She was like, "Why are you smiling so much?" I was like, "I'm playing Mario."
And like that to me shows that it's a huge success, because that's what a Mario game should do. It should just be simple fun and just make you smile the whole time.
Yeah, it's fun. I could play it for 20 minutes. I could play it for 3 hours if I wanted to.
Exactly. And you like the campaign, I'd say it's a decent length. I mean, it would have been nice if it was a little longer.
I thought the main story was a little short.
It might be.
They made up for it with the post game.
Yeah, and it's a deep post game, I think.
Yeah, like after you beat the game, there's 750 stars to collect. You only end up with like 150 after you beat the game, so you still have another 600 stars to collect.
Yeah, and some of them are very simple, like they're just hiding, or just like way in like a hard to see space, and you have to find them.
Like dress up like a clown to make a guy in the game laugh.
Yeah. Well, that's the other fun part about the game.
Oh, the outfits.
Is the different outfits. So, like for instance, one of the worlds you go to is like a giant bowl of soup, essentially.
Yeah.
And like the outfit that you can get for that world is you're a Mario chef,
or like in the dinosaur world you're a caveman.
Yeah. Or you can also go as like a sort of like a pith helmeted explorer. Or, for instance, when you go to the moon, you get like a spacesuit.
Yeah, that was super cool.
Oh, and I love how in the moon, your jumps go higher.
Yeah,
because the
there's no
gravity's low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did he breathe though?
I mean, he has a helmet.
He was in a white tux.
I mean, to be fair, one of his friends is a living, speaking mushroom.
That's true. If you have the Peach amiibo, you can put her in the game. Mario can wear Peach's wedding dress.
Aw.
Yeah. My favorite is the Luigi outfit.
Oh,
the
I
hat.
haven't tried that yet.
The hat, the description says, the L stands for winner. So I got to keep him in that hat. And then when you beat the game, you get like a skin that looks like Mario from Super Mario 64.
Oh, yeah.
Because they recreated the Mushroom Kingdom from that game and upscaled it and put it in the game as a level.
Right, yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah. And I don't know, it was just a really good game. And I also felt what was cool about it is they really used the different worlds to really feel different. They just weren't skins over each other.
No, I think that was a blessing and a curse for the game.
Why do you think it was a curse?
Mario, all the levels are like a cohesive art style.
Mm-hmm.
This one did not.
Yeah, I mean, like the...
Which, depending on who you ask, is good or bad.
Well, like the...
New Donk City.
The New Donk City is, what I would say, is fairly realistic, especially the buildings.
See, what made me uncomfortable is that there's people.
Yeah.
They're people.
Mm-hmm.
Mario goes up to their waist.
Yeah.
That was a little weird. I was like, Mario and Peach are people.
Yeah, but
Why?
This is a different universe or world.
It's just, they're on the same planet, though.
Yeah, so...
I just don't understand, Mark. I don't get it.
Yeah, but they also have, cars and technology and things that the Mushroom Kingdom doesn't have.
So, like, are they a different species then?
I would assume so, yeah.
I don't know. It just... That just makes me uncomfortable.
I mean, Princess Peach rules over a land of sentient mushrooms.
Then there's a part where you're fighting a dragon. The boss fight was cool. But why did it turn into Skyrim?
Oh, like how it looked?
The game turned into Skyrim for a world.
Yeah, a little bit. I don't know. I kind of like, like the giant soup world, whatever, for lack of a better term.
See,
that was like really
that's
out
a good
there.
That's a good fit though.
Yeah.
It was cartoony, it was fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Like most of it I was cool with, but like New Donk City was my favorite level.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt the people were too weird. Like it just was not a good fit.
They were too realistic.
They were too realistic for a Mario game. I didn't quite like that.
Okay.
I didn't like the dragon.
No.
'Cause, I mean, it's cool, but I'm not playing Skyrim. I'm playing Mario. If I want to play Skyrim, I'd get my copy from your house and go play it.
Oh yeah, I still have that.
Yeah, you still have my, yeah.
Well, I don't know. I thought it was cool to see Mario juxtapose against that more realistic art style, and then again going back to the Soup World, I thought the Soup World was more avant-garde than Mario is. So like it was sort of going between the different extremes. And then there were different worlds, like I forget what it's called, but it's sort of the jungle world with those robots that take care of the jungle.
Oh, I really like that one.
Yeah, like that was fairly realistic too.
It was a forest.
Yeah.
See, but it was the robots fit. It just felt like they fit to me.
Okay.
Some of it's just me being nitpicky.
Probably the most Mario-like design was the beach and the mermaid world.
Yeah.
Like that felt more classic Mario.
Those were actually water levels I really enjoyed too.
Yeah, normally water levels I'm like meh.
I hate water levels in Mario games, but that one they did great. The carbonated sea one is one of my favorite levels. That boss fight.
Yeah.
It was actually my favorite boss fight.
Yeah, and that's another one. Like you can take over these little squid and you can use their jet powers to either go really fast over the water or like shoot up into the air, and so that was really neat.
Yeah. I would like to apologize for the cell phone ringing upstairs. That did come through the audio.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, so shout out to our cheap ghetto pod setup. So I apologize to all the listeners. Thank you for...
they're forgiving.
All 20 of you. Thank you for listening. No, back to your radio schedule programming. Yeah, that boss fight was sick.
Yeah.
I liked Bowser Kingdom a lot, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like that Japan old... I don't want to say ancient, but... older Japan.
Yeah, like feudal Japan.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dress up like a samurai.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Oh, I love Samurai Mario.
Yeah, Samurai Mario. And just like walking on the tiles and the music in that level is gorgeous.
Oh, it is. I liked controlling the birds.
Oh,
Because like there's these little birds with like a beak that would extend, and you'd use that to solve puzzles by like using the beak to maneuver bombs.
And you can also use them kind of like how how Wolverine in the comics can sort of climb walls by shooting his claws into the wall. That's what they kind of do with their beaks. And that, oh my gosh, that I found that so frustrating because like sometimes you need to like fall below a roof and you need to like hit the right exact spot and then you'll die if you don't hit it.
It was frustrating in the best way though.
Well, yeah.
It was a challenge. And I think the best part about Mario is that it's a good platformer. We don't see those anymore.
Very rarely.
Like the last notable platformer I can think of that wasn't Mario was Super Meat Boy. That came out 10 years ago.
Well, haven't they done like a reboot of Banjo-Kazooie or Crash Bandicoot?
They did an HD remake of Crash.
Okay.
Banjo-Kazooie had a sequel that flopped.
Oh.
Which, that one doesn't surprise me.
I mean, you can't beat the original anyway.
No, I was thinking Conker's Bad Fur Day, actually. Never mind.
Okay.
You hear of that game?
Sounds vaguely familiar.
Oh, it's weird. We're not going to discuss that game.
Okay, then let's not.
Yeah, it was good. I haven't played a good platformer like that since probably Mario on the Wii U.
Yeah.
Which was a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't get platformers anymore. We get games like Destiny 2 trying to be platformers and failing at it.
Well, they're like shooters with some platforming elements added into it.
Or then we have like adventure games like your Zeldas, your Horizons, your Witchers, your Skyrims, which are also spectacular, but it's not a platformer game.
No.
Sometimes I just want a good get to the end of the level. Sonic's crappy now. So
yeah, that's a shame.
I feel like Mario is just keeping the platforming genre alive right now.
It's the best.
It is.
It's hard to beat it.
You really can't beat Mario.
No.
What would you want in the next Mario game?
Well, see, that's the thing. Like, do I want it to be Mario Odyssey 2? Like what they did with, I can't think, I'm blanking on the title. Mario Galaxy 2?
Yeah.
Which they could easily do, but I would hope that instead of revisiting previous worlds, that it's a whole nother set of 10 to 15 new worlds that you go to. Because the two main components of what makes this game neat is the hat component and then the different worlds and the variety.
Yeah, the new game mechanics, I think, were what made it. I would be okay with them keeping the hat.
Yeah.
I think it'd be cool if we got like something similar to Odyssey, but have like a 4-player experience like we did with Mario and Wii U. Because that was really fun. Yeah. Like it was great alone. It was even better when you got 4 people.
Because it would both helped you and hindered you.
Yeah, because then it'd be a friendly competition. Like if you're getting pissed at somebody, you could just pick them up, throw them off the side of the level.
Well, and like sometimes if you need 2 people to be on this little tiny ledge, but you can't fit 2 people, and so you end up sometimes screwing over your friend by accident or on purpose.
Yes, I think that would be really cool. That Mario Odyssey does have a 2-player mode. Yeah, but player 2 just controls the hat. And it doesn't focus on the hat; it focuses on Mario.
Right.
So 2-player mode does not work very well at all.
It's just sort of a little extra thing thrown in.
Yeah, the first time I did 2-player mode was the first time I played Odyssey because I had a friend who had it, so I played as Cappy. It wasn't very fun at all. I will be honest; it kind of sucked. That made me apprehensive about the game until I went and bought it.
And that was a good decision.
It was one of the better decisions I made in 2017.
Well, yeah. I mean, let's see. I mean, what else could you do? I feel like they can't just keep the mechanics with the hat the same. They would have to add something else.
I'm sure they could think of something.
I mean, part of it, they could come up, especially if they went to different worlds, they could have a completely different set of creatures or objects that you take over. And so that could add new components to it.
For sure.
But what about you? Like, what would you want to see in a sequel?
Besides the 4 players, what else would I want? Honestly, I'm going to be that guy. I want Sunshine 2.
Well, yeah. I mean, I have been wishing and hoping and praying for a Sunshine 2.
We got Luigi's Mansion 2. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
Very true.
Or I'd like a virtual console release of Mario, or Mario Sunshine at least. Because I have a GameCube. I don't have a memory card for it right now. My sister took it to college. So even if I wanted to, I couldn't play it.
Emma, why did you take his memory card?
Because she wanted to play video games too.
You're supposed to be studying, Emma.
I think I have a Switch, so I'm the real winner here.
Yeah, maybe.
She has friends, but I have a Switch. But she has a friend who has a Switch.
Oh.
Shout out to Chris. He probably doesn't listen to that.
But Chris has a Switch.
Yeah, if he listens to this, hey, Chris. On the off chance. Yeah, I don't think him or any of our friends listen to it, but
Okay.
if you guys do,
Hooray.
huzzah. Try to think of other things I'd like in it. Bigger incorporation of Yoshi.
Yeah.
He was in the Mushroom Kingdom level.
Well, that's something that they tend to have done recently, right? Like, he wasn't that big of a part of 3D World at all.
He wasn't in 3D World.
And I don't think he was in Mario Galaxy 1.
He was a big part of Galaxy 2.
Right. So it seems like, why?
I just want more Yoshi. HD remake of Mario World would be cool.
Oh.
Or just like a side scroll. Like,
Wait, I had an idea.
what?
If the next major Mario release, I'm not counting like Smash Brothers or Tennis or anything like that, but the next Mario platformer was on some sort of anniversary of Mario, if you made Mario Odyssey 2 a sort of retrospective of all previous Mario games.
They kind of did that.
They did?
Yeah, at the end of the New Donk City level.
Well, I mean, that was
But like
that was like the 2D part.
it was, but like expand upon that.
Well, I mean, like, you go to the original Mushroom Kingdom, and then, like, later on, you go to the world that was in Super Mario 2 in America, you know, with the Shy Guys
And the turnip.
and the turnips and all
Oh,
that.
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
game. That
and
was a really fun one.
Another one, like, you go to the Super Mario world with Yoshi and that whole section, and then you could do, like, Sunshine and 64 and
Like a big Mario retrospective.
yeah, and like I'm not saying like a direct copy. I'm not saying that, but sort of taking inspiration from those different worlds
Like
to use
doing
it
the-
as different kingdoms.
Like using
and
the art
Odyssey.
styles to make it.
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be, but just just different aspects of it,
Yeah.
and going to it as if Mario is going back through his journey over the last 30 years.
I gotta Google when the Mario anniversary is because we might have time to call Nintendo and say, "Yo, what up, Mitchell and Mark?" Would it be Donkey Kong's anniversary?
I would say no. Our anniversary of Super Mario Brothers, because that's like the real first start.
I would agree with that. I didn't like Donkey Kong very much.
No, I mean, like, that's technically the origin of the Mario character, but that's not the real beginning of anything. Another world I really liked was the sort of Day of the Dead Mexico world.
Yeah, it reminded me of that movie Book of Life, but in a Mario game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite movies, so I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Like, some of the different creatures you take control of have different abilities. Like, there's one sort of like a giant statue, and when you're in the giant statue,
like
you
the
move super slowly, but you can see things that you can't see as Mario. So, like, you can see pathways over, like, lakes of lava that you can't get across.
Yeah.
Different things like that. So, like, that's a really cool ability.
Mario came out in 83.
83.
So 2013, 14, 15. 14.
2018
This is
would
the
be an anniversary.
This is the 25-year anniversary.
So it would have been perfect to have released a game this year right now.
I think we will.
Really?
We're getting Nintendo Direct this month.
Yeah. But I mean, I doubt they're going to come out with a second mainline Mario game.
They're going to do
this
something.
year. You would hope so.
They did a big deal for the 25th anniversary of Pokemon, or
Yeah.
the 20th anniversary of Pokemon.
Pokemon is only 5 years.
Wait, no, Mario
Younger?
35.
Oh, 35. Okay, I was going to say it
I
has to
did
be
my math
35.
wrong. Mario's 35.
Okay.
Yeah, they did a big deal over Pokemon's 25th anniversary a few years ago.
Okay.
So they're doing, and Zelda got a big 25th anniversary. They got
35th, maybe.
it's 20 or whatever. No, it's 25. It was 7 years ago.
Oh, okay.
No, the Skyward Sword.
Oh, right.
And then when you bought that year, you would get the soundtrack too for like special 25th anniversary edition of like medley of like all the Zelda songs and stuff. It's really nice.
Well, that brings up another point. I think the music in this game is really, really good.
Oh my god!
I find myself humming some of the songs at work all the time.
like the New Dog City song, or just the Odyssey song.
Oh, the Odyssey song is in my head almost 24/7.
Because I'm your one-up girl, right?
Sure.
I just made the podcast awkward.
I mean, you make most experiences awkward.
Everyone listening's like, ooh. Yeah, the music was great. I like the level when you're getting the band together and like you can hear the song tracks layer on top of each other.
Yeah, until it does the Mario theme.
That's
Oh, what about the Mario? What about the dog?
What about the dog?
You know what I'm talking about? Okay, so there are certain parts in each of the worlds or kingdoms are called where you'll see a dog, and it's like a realistic looking dog, but it's wearing like a fedora. And when
Is it really?
Yeah, and when you come up to it, it will, happily bark at you, and then if you follow it, it will take you to like secret hidden things because a dog is Mario's best friend.
I totally just messed up the audio there, but yeah, I forgot about the dog.
How could you forget about the dog?
I like the little toad with the headphones, and he's like, "I'm thinking of this music. Can you help me find it?"
Oh yeah,
and then you go through the list of songs, and if you find the one he wants, he gives you a star.
Yeah,
Or I guess moon technically.
Oh, do you know what's one of the challenges I haven't done yet?
What?
It's annoying. Is the jump rope one?
Oh,
I cannot do
screw
that.
that, man.
I know.
I hated that one.
Yeah, have you gotten it?
I tried. I got like 2.
Yeah,
I
I got the volleyball one.
I like the challenge where you had to park a scooter on top of a skyscraper in New York City.
Yeah.
I did it. You had to like jump from building to building on on like a moped, but I did it.
Yay!
It took me an hour.
Kids, don't try that in the real world.
No, kids don't have scooters anymore.
I mean,
They have hoverboards.
I mean, this isn't Back to the Future 2, Mitchell.
I wish it was. Actually,
No, you don't want Back to the Future 2.
I kind of do want self-lacing Nikes though.
Yeah, that would be kind of nice.
That would be super nice. Overall, Mark, what would you give the game on a scale of 1 to 10 Mario stars?
Ooh. Well, I mean, I can't give it a 10 because it's not my favorite Mario game.
No, I wouldn't give it a
but
10 either.
It is easily my second favorite Mario game.
I'd give it like a 9.
Yeah, so I'd give it a 9.5.
Then, ooh.
I'd give it a 9.5.
It was good.
Because, I mean, one of the things that I both loved and hated about Sunshine is that I just loved the concept of it and I thought it was great. But some of the, what I call fantasy levels, which were sort of like the more platforming parts, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
Those things were so hard and so challenging, and they filled me with rage.
Everything fills you with
rage, I was
rage,
obsessed with finishing all of those. And that's like one of the only games that I've done everything, like completed every single part of that game. Yeah.
I've actually never 100%ed a game, so I'm impressed with that.
Yeah. I mean, because I was that obsessed with it.
Actually, that's not true. Remember Star Wars Force Unleashed?
Yeah.
Back in the day, like 10 years ago?
Uh-huh.
I 100%ed that.
Nice.
It's a great game.
I've never really played it.
The first one was awesome. The second one was so bad.
Aw.
Literally the definition of bad. Spoiler alert for a 10-year-old game. No. The character dies at the end. They bring him back magically because the thing is that they cloned him on Camino. And they just had like 1 million of them.
Okay, well then whatever happened to him then?
They just killed him and they kept bringing more out. Every time he died, he'd be a different one.
Oh, I see.
It
okay.
sucked. Mario isn't that bad.
No, yeah, I would definitely give it anyway. Like, I feel like I'm not as obsessed with completing everything, and maybe because it's not as difficult.
I mean, it's like what, 750 stars to get?
Yeah.
How many do you have now?
I meant to check it before I went to work this morning, but I'm in the 400s.
Yeah, you're much further than I'm in maybe 250s. I also play more different Switch games than you do.
Yeah, I only have that game so far.
Yeah, I have a Tetris one and a JRPG that I play too.
I'm kind of surprised actually they haven't announced any DLC for it. Because they've been really active with DLC with Zelda.
That's true. Well, I think they're doing that because that's just the Western RPG model, though.
Very true. Very true.
Zelda, they went out to make a WRPG,
mm-hmm.
and think of all the big Western RPGs: Skyrim,
mm-hmm.
DLC, Fallout, DLC, Witcher. Is it not Xenoblade? Horizon,
mm-hmm.
all of DLC. Actually, gotta get the Horizon DLC. That reminds me.
But I mean, I could imagine them adding like another kingdom with a DLC.
Maybe they'll just do it for free, like Overwatch does.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Because Blizzard just doesn't. They don't want to do paid DLC, so like you get all your characters and new maps and items for free.
Ooh,
we should play Overwatch one day and do a pilot on it.
Okay,
that's coming in the future.
Okay, I'm game.
Someday. Gotta get further away when I laugh like this. Now back to your regular scheduled programming. Do you have anything else to add to this, Mark?
No. I mean, again, it's just a great game if you are hesitant to get a Switch.
Oh, it's totally worth buying a Switch.
It's totally worth buying a Switch just for that game.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's a great game if you're a Mario lover. You gotta get it. If you don't like this game, I seriously don't know what's wrong with you.
If you enjoy life, you're gonna get this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's really amazing.
Yeah, I was on the fence about it until I just said, screw it, I'll get it with my Switch when I get one.
And I sense that one day I'll replay it. Like, I don't feel like...
Oh my god, I'm totally gonna be able to replay it next year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like I would be bored with it or not surprised by different things.
Like, honestly, I could probably replay it now and be happy with it still.
Yeah, because it's just fun exploring all the different kingdoms and doing things in different order. And yeah,
like, I just bring it wherever I go. Like, that's my on-the-go game at this point. The Switch is portable, so if I'm at work on a lunch break or something, I'm not going to sit down and play Xenoblade. That'll suck me in for hours.
Oh, yeah.
But Mario, I can sit have fun with. I know I'm going to have a good time no matter where I'm at with it. Awesome. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to get back to John Quincy Adams.
Oh, yeah.
Is that how we talked?
No.
Fun fact. Do you know John Quincy Adams was the first photographed president?
I did know that.
I did too.
And that's why you said it.
My mom told me last night.
Oh, I'm impressed with your mom.
My mom is a very impressive person. All right, we will be right back.
Bye.
Bye. We're back.
We're back.
I missed you all very much.
I did not.
It was a whole 15 seconds for you guys, about half an hour for us.
Right.
We had to play with my cat.
And get more Cherry Pepsi.
We love Cherry Pepsi.
Please sponsor us, Cherry Pepsi.
Oh my god, if Cherry Pepsi sponsored us, I would get a Cherry Pepsi just tattoo if they would give me money. I would drink it every day.
I mean, I kind of do actually already. So.
Do you really?
Yeah.
I love Cherry Pepsi.
Yeah.
Cherry anything.
Yeah.
The coffee I'm drinking right now tastes like cherries. Well, I'm not drinking it at the moment.
Actually, every single time I go out to dinner with my boss or I go to lunch, she knows to order a cherry Coke for me.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I know.
She's such a nice person.
She is.
I like our boss.
Yeah, she's awesome.
So, Jaqua.
You make him sound like he's French.
Jaqua.
So, yeah, anyway.
John Quincy Adams.
John Quincy Adams.
America's 5th president? Second?
Sixth.
6th?
Yeah, sixth.
Second?
Sixth.
10th?
No.
16th.
16th was Lincoln.
I hugged Lincoln once.
You did hug a Lincoln once.
There was an Abraham Lincoln impersonator. Went up, gave him a hug.
I mean, why wouldn't you?
Then I said, look out for Lee Harvey Oswald.
And you made me cry.
Yet again.
I mean, to be fair, you make me want to cry most times I interact with you.
Yeah, that's what happens when you sit across the table with me hours on end.
Yeah, very true.
Yikes.
Yeah. But anyway.
John Quincy Adams.
John Quincy Adams. So, I guess the reason I want to talk about him today is, first of all, he's pretty much my hero.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to call BS on that.
Why?
Captain Picard.
Also my hero.
Benjamin Sisko.
Also my hero. Trying to think of other people.
No, I'm trying. Captain Kirk. I forgot.
Yeah.
James Tiberius Kirk.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember
Hero.
I couldn't remember his middle name.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Jonathan Archer, hero. Catherine Janeway, hero.
What about Archer from Archer?
Yeah, I said Jonathan Archer.
Is that his name?
Jonathan Archer, yeah.
From Archer?
No, not from Archer the show.
No, I'm trying to remember his first name.
Oh. It's something like real snooty.
Sterling.
Sterling.
Sterling Archer.
Yeah, no, he's not my hero.
He's my hero.
Well, yeah.
So why is our friend Jaqua your hero?
For many reasons. One for his accomplishments, one for his ethics and morality, and another reason because of his foresight. He's the kind of guy that, like there's always that movie or story where you go, oh man, if only they had listened to that guy.
Like the wise old sage archetype.
Well, it doesn't even have to be that. But just if they had only listened to that guy, things would have been so much better, or the problems wouldn't have happened. Pretty much at every single stage of John Quincy Adams' life, he was that guy.
So that's how you see yourself on a day-to-day basis.
I mean, in my more egotistical moments, yeah. I mean, but no, I mean, he's the kind of person that I feel like we need to see more, both in terms of our real life, but also in terms of our fiction. Like, he's not a hero in the sense of, like, you would never make a movie about a guy like this.
They did make a movie about him, though.
I mean, kinda. I mean, yeah.
They made the Quincy Chronicles.
The Adams Chronicles? Yeah. I mean, that was about the whole family. But yeah, and actually he is in a movie. It's a really great movie. It was a Steven Spielberg movie in the mid to late 90s called Amistad, and he is essentially the main character in it.
So there you go. Spielberg made him.
Yeah, and it's really excellent. I encourage you to watch it.
Maybe one day.
No, you will. You'd like it. It's good.
Okay, maybe after we watch The Room, we'll watch Amistad.
I think the difference in quality will astound you.
It will be staggering.
It will be staggering in the extreme.
Yes. Oh, I fully expect that.
Yeah. But anyway, I feel like before I can explain or help you understand why John Quincy Adams is the most amazing human being of all time, I feel like we need to do a little overview of his life and accomplishments.
Let's get an overview.
All right. So just quick thing. You know, what all you need to know when you hear about a historical figure is he was born in 1767 and he died in 1848.
He was 10 years old when this country became a country.
Yeah, pretty much. And actually, you know, most people have heard of the famous Battle of Bunker Hill.
Great battle.
Yeah. But anyway, he saw it from his house.
Really?
Yeah, because his house, so if you picture Boston as a bay, and Boston looks like a little balloon in the harbor there, in the city. And there's a community, Charleston, which is north of Boston. And then John Quincy Adams and the Adams family lived in Braintree and Quincy, Massachusetts, which was on the south side of the bay.
Stupid question.
Yeah.
Is that where he got his middle name from?
Sort of.
Okay.
Quincy, Massachusetts was named after a old relative of his who was a sort of like a city father.
So it was like the same namesake for both the city and the man.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. But anyway, so like the battle took place north of Boston and he lived south of Boston, but both events were on hills, so he could see the smoke and the fire and all that. And actually a close family friend of the Adamses, Joseph Warren, who was a very early leader in the American Revolution, died in that battle.
Did he really?
Yeah, and in fact, if you ever see the painting, The Battle of Bunker Hill, he's the Central American figure about to get bayoneted.
I've actually seen that painting.
Yeah.
It's a great painting.
It is. It's very, very moving.
I would get it framed. Put it on a wall somewhere.
Yeah, you should.
I'm surprised you don't.
No, I don't, but I have many other paintings.
Yes, you do.
On my walls.
Mostly comic books.
Some, yeah.
And starships.
And starships. But a lot of historical paintings, too.
Because you classy.
I'm very classy. But as you'll see, and which is kind of interesting about his life, is one of his earliest memories, you know, as a child, is only 8 or 9 years old, watching this pivotal battle, and then not, essentially seeing his friend die, but knowing that people he really knew, his neighbors, his parents' friends, were in this battle suffering and dying.
Yeah, that's crazy as a 9-year-old to witness.
Yeah.
When I was 9, I was thinking about Pokemon.
Exactly. And he was no normal 9-year-old either.
Oh, I could have. It's not nobody like that's a normal 9-year-old.
Yeah. So from a very early age, he was very aware of his country. And that sounds kind of silly, but he grew up, his father was a leader of the revolution. So was, another member of his family, Samuel Adams, and his mom, Abigail Adams, while not, a political leader by any stretch of the imagination, was very involved, as much as a woman could be in those days, and very instilled in her children as his dad did, the importance of patriotism and service and history and really paying attention to the world. And that kind of defines his life.
Cool.
But anyway, but his sort of real adventure begins when his father was assigned to be a major diplomat in Europe. So during the American Revolution, one of the things that the fledgling United States needed was a lot of money and a lot of supplies to fight a war.
We got to make it rain.
Well, yeah, because we didn't have anything.
Yeah, wars are expensive.
There were no places in the United States, that made, for instance, weapons at all. And of course, if you're fighting a war, you kind of need those. So we sent diplomats abroad, mostly to France and the Netherlands, to ask for loans, ask for money, diplomatic recognition, arms, troops, all sorts of things, alliances. And the very famous Benjamin Franklin mission that got France to become our ally and recognize the United States was a turning point in the war, of course. But anyway, the amazing thing about his life is...
You can unzip your coat, Mark.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. It's warm in here now.
Yeah, technical difficulties. 2 seconds. Moving the mic. Mark, unzip your coat.
Okay.
Bear with.
Yeah. So his dad was sent abroad as essentially the second in command of the diplomatic corps in Europe. Benjamin Franklin was the head. But as often happened in this time, fathers would take their children or nephews or other family members along with them, not only as companionship, but also as to act as like secretaries, to take notes and different things like that. Because the idea of having like a staff, picture in the movie where they show the president walking down a hallway and there's all those people handing him papers and talking, like that didn't really exist. But anyway, so basically at the age of what we would consider like a middle school kid, he went to Europe.
Yeah, like a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
That's not even middle school.
No, I mean,
yet.
he left in 1778, so he's a little older than that, but he was like 11 or 12.
So he's like South Park kid age.
Yeah, kind of. And he went to Europe, and there he, met the King of France.
That's true. So was he one of the diplomats, or did he go with his dad?
Well, he went with his dad,
Okay.
and he was sort of attached to his father as a secretary, essentially.
John Adams.
John Adams.
Who was the second president.
Who would later become the second president. And while in Europe, he learned French and Dutch because the Netherlands was another source of money and supplies to the U.S. And then later he wasn't quite fluent in German, but he got pretty good with German. And then he also learned to read and write Latin and Greek. So the guy knew a lot of languages.
Yeah.
And why French is important is because back in those times in Europe, French was the diplomatic language, sort of like how today English is the diplomatic language. So like, for instance, in the Russian court, no one spoke Russian.
Why would they?
Because it's Russia.
In Soviet Russia, you don't speak Russian. Russian speaks you.
Well, yeah. But, and what's kind of cool is, we think of this as kind of obvious now that kids learn languages faster than adults, right?
Yeah.
Well, they didn't quite understand that back then, but a lot of Americans that were sent abroad for diplomatic service or trade missions didn't speak French.
So was the English just spoken widely over there enough for them to get by?
Not really. I mean, again, if you were merchants that traded with England, but if you were, a major European diplomat or, government official, if you spoke a language other than your own, it would have been French. Just sort of like today, if you asked anyone in the world, what's your second language? It's going to be English.
Yeah, like English, Spanish, or French, I think are like the big three right now.
Pretty much, yeah. But back then it was French. And so young JQA became very important to the mission because he could actually speak fluent French. And in fact, at the age of 14, he accompanied Francis Dana, who was appointed essentially to be the first ambassador to Russia. And Francis Dana didn't speak any French or any Russian. So
he just spoke English then.
He just spoke English.
So then that's where young
JQA.
Young Quincy comes in.
Yeah, so he went as a 14-year-old kid to Russia, and he lived there for almost 3 years.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning something new.
You will learn a lot of new things.
That's what I love.
And if you think about it, so if you were working for the ambassador, Francis Dana, who doesn't speak French or Russian, and this little kid speaks French, in effect, who is the ambassador to Russia?
John.
Yeah, a 14-year-old kid.
Wow.
For all intents and purposes.
Yeah, a kid is the person that's doing all the diplomatic relationing.
Yeah. And then it's kind of one thing that's really kind of neat is that after his mission to Russia ended, he traveled through Finland and Sweden and Denmark and Germany. And he and this is when he's a young man now, like in essentially like high school. And later on, he kind of kept a diary throughout most of his life. And his experiences in that area became a book and like a travel log, and it actually kind of sold a little well.
Did it really?
Yeah, so picture like a little travel novel.
Is it still in print today?
Well, technically, yes.
Ish.
In that Library of Congress and various historical societies publish his writings quite often. So
Do you own any?
I do, but I don't own his travel logs.
That's sad.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more interested in his political thoughts. But anyway, so he learned to be fluent in Dutch and learned all these languages. But then after independence and in 1783, his parents said, okay, you've been in Europe too long. You're essentially more European essentially now than American. So they sent him back home, and he went to Harvard. So he earned a bachelor's degree in 1787, and then later a master's degree in 1790.
What did he get his degrees in?
Just sort of what we would call like letters, like a bachelor's in letters and arts.
Okay.
And then he was admitted to the bar in 1791. So he followed in his father's footsteps, became a lawyer. And he didn't really like being a lawyer. But basically, if you weren't going to be a merchant or a farmer,
You were a lawyer.
you were a lawyer. I mean, that was like like other than a lawyer, like lawyers, doctors, and priests were what we would call like the professional class of today.
Yeah.
Like if you were we would say, oh, you're going to be an engineer, or, you're going to go into computers. There wasn't really an equivalent of that.
Yeah, because they didn't have computers for
Well, yeah.
engineering, so that does make sense.
Yeah. But anyway, so then his political career started out going off on the ground when he was nominated to be the ambassador to the Netherlands, Holland, in 1793 by President Washington. And one of the amazing things is John Quincy Adams either served or served with every president from Washington to Lincoln. So that's 16 presidents.
That's trippy.
And that includes himself,
Wow.
which is kind of neat.
That is kind of neat.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically, if you were anyone during that whole period, he knew you and you
Wow.
knew him, which is kind of neat. It's a fairly unique position.
He's one of the boys.
He's one of the boys. And
I'm sorry, that was like the dirtiest way you could have said that.
Yeah. Okay. Fine.
He is one of the boys.
One of the boys. And when this was going on, this is when the French Revolution really started going. And so if you read his diary and a lot of his experiences, he saw what was going on with the French Revolution. So he sort of witnessed the events of his home country going on as a kid. And then as a young man, he saw all the turmoil that was going on in Europe. And while he was in Europe, he met his wife, Louisa Catherine Johnson, and they eventually married. And she was an American who was born in Britain. Her father was an American that lived in London.
So technically, she's a Brit that went to America.
Well, but I mean, she was, technically an American, but yeah.
You're not American if you're not born in America.
Well, and fun fact, Louisa Catherine was the first foreign-born first lady, and the second one wasn't until today.
It went downhill from there.
Yeah. Try not to make any modern comments.
That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah. But anyway, and then in 1796, Washington appointed him ambassador to Portugal, but he never made it there because of the war going on.
Which war?
The French Revolutionary Wars.
Okay.
But then he was redirected to become the prime minister of Prussia. And Prussia is essentially Germany. Prussia was like the central state that Germany eventually coalesced around.
Okay.
So basically, and he was appointed minister to Prussia by his dad when his dad became president.
That's cool.
And now you may think, well, wait a minute here. John Quincy Adams' dad was the vice president when George Washington appointed John QA to be, minister. And
I
now,
didn't think that at all.
okay, well, you should have, but
I'm sorry.
it's all right. Now, some people would go, wait a minute, isn't that nepotism? Well, kinda.
It is.
But here's the thing. Back in those days especially, there were very few qualified people to do any of this kind of work.
That's a very good point.
One of the most qualified people
John Quincy
was
Adams.
John Quincy Adams. So like it would have been worse. I mean, it's like, if I don't know. Yes, it's nepotism in a way, but it's not the case of the only reason someone got a job is because they knew somebody.
It's like nepotism by necessity.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, he probably would have gotten the position even if he wasn't related
Yeah, it's
to
just
him.
convenient at that point. It didn't probably helped a little, but that's not why.
No, effectively, this kid had been a diplomat since he was in middle school. So, yeah.
He's got more experience than anybody.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's something you'll kind of see throughout his whole life and career is that almost no matter what room he's in, he's the most experienced person in it.
Just like you.
No, not just like me. Yeah, so that's really cool. And then when he came back to the United States, he was elected to the Massachusetts State Senate, and he served in it very briefly. And then he was appointed senator.
Of the country?
Well, he went to the U.S. Congress as senator, and he was from Massachusetts.
So he wasn't in the state senate, but he was in the country senate representing...
Right.
Okay.
Right, representing Massachusetts in the U.S. Congress for 5 years. And here he began... It was like his first big step into something that would kind of define his character and his life, in that he was often misunderstood because he was too good of a person. And that sounds so weird in many ways, but it's really true. And I'll give you an example. The Louisiana Purchase, right?
It's when they purchased Louisiana.
Right. The greatest land deal in the history of the world, right? That's always the line, right?
Sure.
Well, the Jefferson administration, who Jefferson beat John Adams for president in the election of 1800. And that was the first time there was a peaceful change of power from two different political parties. The Federalists were George Washington and John Adams, and then Thomas Jefferson and those after were, well, they were called Republicans.
But then that ideology kind of shifted.
Right, but we call them usually Democratic Republicans because the Jeffersonian Republicans eventually morphed into the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
So I might interchangeably call them Republicans or Democrats, but we're talking about the same people.
Well, think of a term just to keep track of easily.
DRs, maybe?
Okay, if we just call them Democratic Republicans.
Yeah,
we'll
try that.
We don't want to... I'm going to get confused if we mix them up.
I know.
I will be completely honest.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But anyway...
I don't have a political science degree like you.
I know. But anyway, one of the things that we'll just say the Jeffersonians maybe.
I like the Jeffersonians.
Yeah, came to power was that they were complaining that the Federalists were too interested in federal power and not the states. Mm-hmm. And they also wanted a small government, and they felt that the Federalists were breaking the Constitution.
So that sounds like a modern-day Republican Party almost.
Who?
The people you just talked about.
The Republicans?
Is that who they were talking about?
The Democratic Republicans? Yeah. Kind of, yes. That's very astute of you.
They're like, oh, small government.
Right.
Woo.
But notice that the Democratic Republicans are where the Democrats, the modern Democrats, started from.
That's true.
They evolved from them. But anyway.
But they got all progressive. It happens.
Right. Things change, and you'll see. But anyway, the Louisiana Purchase was basically the government doubling the size of the country.
Hey, besides Louisiana, what did they get out of that?
So picture the map of the U.S. in your head. Okay. Now, take out California.
Okay.
Texas, Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, all that kind of Southwest.
So, like, the Southwest was not included.
No, and neither was Oregon and Washington. But basically take everything from the Mississippi River west to the Rocky Mountains is all of Louisiana, was Louisiana Purchase.
So that's like good 3/4 of the country.
Nebraska,
right,
Iowa, all of that.
But why would we want Iowa and Nebraska?
Corn.
Oh, I do love me some corn.
See, there you go. Anyway, huge, right?
Yeah.
Well, don't you think that doubling the size of the country and buying all this territory, isn't that like a giant usage of federal power?
I would say yes.
Right. And also there was nothing in the Constitution that said that the government could buy territory.
But there wasn't anything that said that they couldn't, was there?
Right. But remember, the Democratic Republicans, or the Jeffersonians, whatever you want to call them, ran on the fact that the Federalists were taking too much power and not respecting the Constitution.
But you can't respect something that isn't there.
Well, what the Democratic Republicans were saying was that you can only do things that are said so in the Constitution.
Okay, so they're really black and white about it.
Right.
Like, that's the Bible.
Right. Well, buying territory is not in the Constitution.
But
so
then how did the Constitution get all the territory? People who wrote that, they bought their territory.
Well, it's not I'm talking about individuals. We're talking about
the
country.
Gotta play devil's advocate when I can.
And so they were very hypocritical about this, right?
Yes.
Well, a lot of New Englanders, which is where the Federalists were strong, opposed it because basically if you're in a political party, you always just oppose what the other party wants to do, no matter what it is.
That's American politics.
Yeah,
right
it's
there.
just politics anyway. If basically one party said, let's pass a bill that says puppies are cute, the other party will go,
cats
no,
are better.
puppies are awful.
I hate puppies. I like cats and I like hamsters.
Exactly. Well, anyway, so John Quincy Adams spoke out against the purchase. And he said, what we need is a constitutional amendment that says the federal government can buy new territory.
Which amendment was that?
It never passed.
Sad.
Well, what a lot of people thought was that he was proposing it because he opposed the purchase.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't. He wanted the Louisiana territory. He just wanted to make it legal.
Yeah.
So basically says, if we're going to do this, let's do it right.
Yeah, he just wanted to go through the proper channels.
Right.
Just to make everybody.
And he also didn't like the idea of, because there were people living, especially in New Orleans, he says, we are forcing American citizenship on foreigners.
So would those be Native Americans or settlers?
Well, yeah. I mean, like
a mix? Or?
Well, Louisiana was the state of what is now the state of Louisiana was by far the most settled part.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of Louisiana territory was, by and large, just settled with Native Americans. Very few Europeans there.
Okay.
But Louisiana was an incredibly important spot, like the state of Louisiana,
Yeah,
New Orleans, because of the port.
Yeah, Gulf of Mexico. That's right. That goes right to South America.
Right. It's by far the best port in the southern part of North America. And so it was very strategically important for trade, military reasons, all sorts of things. And so there were, quite a number of people living there. And, JQA said, look, it's immoral to force citizenship on people. Let's ask them if they want to be citizens. Let's figure this out.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, a lot of people took this as him basically making up BS in order to oppose the purchase. Well, if you read his diary, which I have, he's very clearly upset about all this stuff. He's not just doing it like, ha ha ha, I get to screw over Jefferson.
No, he's like, why can't we get along?
Yeah, like he wanted to do things by the book. And he also wanted to make the book better.
Yeah.
Like he was very much a rule of the letter kind of guy, but he also wanted to make the best laws possible and always searching for that. And you'll see that as part of his career. But then basically after that fight, he started to view his fellow Federalists as unnecessarily obstructionist. And he felt they were becoming sort of too conservative, not interested in doing anything. And so he switched parties. He became a Democrat-Republican. He started out as a Federalist. But eventually what happened is the Federalist Party collapsed.
Go boom.
Yeah. And it kind of got absorbed into the Democratic Republicans until there was only one party.
Which was just the Democratic Republican Party?
Right.
And is that where it split off into what we have today?
You would think, but no.
No? Okay.
Kind of, but no. So he joined the wing of the party called the Nationalist Republicans. And what that basically meant was the part of the party that was less states' rights interested was much more interested in an active federal government. And also they tend to be more urban and more merchant-based rather than farming. So basically figure like the northern wing of the party versus the southern wing.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he did that. But then while he was in the Senate, because being a senator isn't fancy enough for JQA, he had to become a professor at Harvard.
He's even classier than that.
Right. So he became professor at Harvard, and he was a professor of oratory,
Which is?
giving fancy speeches.
Okay. So glorified communications professor.
Well, kind of. But what you have to remember is that before the basically modern media, before radio, before even newspapers became in their modern form, one of the most powerful forms of political communication and even of entertainment was oratory. For instance, like political campaign speeches, people used to come from all around to hear candidates speak, and it became like going to a movie, essentially. And people would sit through 4 or 5 hours of speeches.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a big deal. So being a good speaker was a powerful tool.
It's very important when that's your only medium of communication.
Yeah, exactly. And later on, that's how Lincoln became significant.
He went on that tour, right?
Exactly, the Lincoln-Douglas debates.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how he gained national recognition, essentially, and how eventually he became president. So
Was that him or that got on a train, or was that Roosevelt that did? It was Roosevelt who did the speech on the train. Never mind.
a lot of people gave speeches on trains.
I'm thinking of Roosevelt.
Probably.
Speak soft, carry a big stick.
Yep. That's a Roosevelt. Yep.
He's my boy.
He's also a good man. We might have to talk about him another time.
I would love to talk about him. I'd like to do him and FDR one day.
Okay, we can do that.
FDR is my dude.
I love him too. But anyway, so he was so this is the other cool thing, is that eventually he was offered to be the president of Harvard, and he turned that down.
Why did he turn that down?
Well, because he wasn't interested in it. He'd rather be more of a politician than a teacher, but I mean, he was a teacher at Harvard for several years.
That just shows how qualified as a person he was.
Yeah, and the funny thing is you'll see that he turned down 2 jobs that if he had just only done either, he would have been considered a very successful man in life. I mean, if you're in the end of your life, you end up being the president of Harvard,
You did something right.
You did something right in life, right? But yeah, he turned that down. But instead, he was appointed to be the official ambassador to Russia in 1809 by President Madison. And so he packed up his wife and his youngest son, Charles Francis.
Why only the youngest son? Or was the other one just old? Or the other one just old enough to not come with? Or
so Russia at this time was kind of an up-and-coming backwoods. There were very few schools there. It wasn't a place, and this is again before modern conveniences. It's cold in Russia, and it was even colder back then because they didn't have, heat. And so they decided to leave their 2 oldest kids, George Washington Adams and John Adams.
George Washington Adams.
Yeah, and John Adams III. They left them in the care of relatives to go to school, essentially.
Okay.
But Charles Francis was only a year old, and so they didn't want to separate.
Yeah,
from
don't,
the mom,
you don't
especially.
You don't want to take a baby away from its mom.
Yeah, it's not a cool
That's
thing
kind
usually.
of a dick move.
Yeah, and so the family packed up, and they went to St. Petersburg
In Russia.
which is the capital at the time.
Great city.
I mean, not really at the time.
Said Mitchell as he stuttered while he fixes their space heater.
But and his choice of being minister was really interesting, because this is still the Napoleonic and French Revolutionary Wars were still going on, and Russia was really important because it vacillated between an ally of Napoleon and being an enemy of Napoleon. And ever since the revolution, the Americans had a lot of problems with the British, mostly over rights of sailors. So what would happen is British ships would capture American ships, whether like merchant vessels or even military ships. And they would find aboard a lot of British people.
Why?
Well, because if you're an English sailor and that's how you earn your living, do you want to join the British Navy, which is in desperate need of sailors while it's fighting its decades-long war with Napoleon? Or would you rather jump ship to an American merchant vessel where you're not going to die, probably, and you can speak the language?
But pirates.
What?
were pirates a problem for
Yeah,
those?
sometimes.
Did they go yar?
I'm sure a few of them went yar a couple times.
I'm sorry. Sidetrack.
No, it's okay.
I thought merchants. I thought pirates stealing the merchants.
Just pictured them like holding the merchant under their arm.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then like stealing all the treasure and stuff.
No, but anyway,
I think pirates are interesting.
probably.
Probably.
Yeah, but it created this like big tension that with Britain. But anyway, the Tsar of Russia, Tsar Alexander, really liked Adams, and they actually became kind of friends. And kind of imagine this, like Russia at the time and the Russian Tsar was about as autocratic as you could get, like the least American person imaginable, and still being European, right?
Yeah.
And then the Adamses, unlike most of the other founding fathers, these were really normal guys. You know, Washington, Jefferson, Madison, these were people born with a giant silver spoon in their mouth, living on giant estates. If you ever see the homes that John and John Quincy Adams were born in, the entire house was barely bigger than this basement. It was a teeny tiny house.
Yeah. Yeah, we are in a very small basement right now.
Yeah, I mean, they were a house of normal people, of regular folk. But anyway, so here's this, you know, son of a lawyer, and he's a lawyer himself, and he's a diplomat to the Tsar of Russia, and they formed up a friendship. And this became very important later on. Oh, and here's the other part to the, if he had turned down a job, you know, he's still important. He turned down a job.
Yeah.
He was, in 1811, he was asked if he would want to be a member of the Supreme Court. And he said no.
Damn.
Yeah, so he could have been the president
So
of
that
Harvard.
was the second job you were referring to.
Yeah, and then he could have been on the Supreme Court, and he goes, nah, I got better things to do.
Like becoming president one day.
Becoming president one day. But anyway, when the War of 1812 between Britain and America broke out, and mostly started because of those, like, British ships boarding American ships and stealing people off of American ships, Russia both had an interest in stopping America and Britain from fighting, but the Tsar actually offered to mediate between Britain and the United States.
Really?
And while that didn't happen, it's often seen as it pushed Britain to take America seriously, because here was another great European power willing to throw its hat in with the United States. They weren't going to go to war with Britain over it, but they were basically saying, we care about both of you on an equal, not really equal, but on
Equal-ish.
equal-ish, and we will sort of step in on the Americans' behalf. And some of that had to do with the fact that the Tsar really liked John Quincy Adams, and that really, you know, that helped.
Yeah, it pays off to have friends sometimes.
Yeah, it's almost like having a really important and powerful person as a reference on your resume. Like, it may not get you the job, but it's gonna help.
So I put you on my resume.
That's not gonna help at all. False.
False.
That did help.
Yeah, it did help. I got a new job and a promotion using you as a reference both.
Yay.
Actually, side note, Mark is a good reference. He sent somebody a reference. I got offered the job half an hour after he sent it in. So.
I'm that magical.
So Mark is actually that person for me.
But anyway, in 1814, Adams was recalled from Russia to be the lead negotiator to end the War of 1812. So he was the lead diplomat that helped sign the Treaty of Ghent, which ended the War of 1812. And in many ways, the diplomatic team was kind of a Justice League Avengers group of up-and-coming important people.
Justice League.
So there's John Quincy Adams, two kind of minor people, but then other ones that were really important were Henry Clay, who was at the time the Speaker of the House of Representatives.
So he would be like the Iron Man. And then
Sure.
John Quincy Adams is the
Captain America. Definitely is Captain America.
Yes.
And Henry Clay would be an incredibly important figure throughout basically the antebellum American period. So that's the United States between the War of 1812 and the Civil War.
Yeah, I've definitely heard his name before. I wouldn't be able to tell you what he did off
He
the top
ran
of my head.
for president many times without success. But
I know he's a big loser, but he also did a lot of things that were winning.
he did, and he should have won. But anyway. And then the other one was Albert Gallatin, who was the Secretary of the Treasury at the time.
So he's like Aquaman.
Sure. But Gallatin was a very important person in the Jefferson and Madison administrations. And he, in a way, probably would have had a bigger political career if he wasn't foreign born. He was kind of the first non-naturalized American citizen that became really important in American politics.
So back then, could non-naturalized citizens still serve?
Well, they couldn't be president just like today.
So, so like today, a non-naturalized citizen could be in the Congress, but not president.
Exactly.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Of course.
I thought everyone had to be naturalized,
I mean, natural. I mean, you can be naturalized, meaning that
or like living from
right
here.
Yeah, but you can't. You have to, in order to be the U.S. president, you have to be born an American citizen.
Okay.
But anyway, Gallatin was from Switzerland.
Oh, Swedish chef.
What?
Swedish chef.
Switzerland, not Sweden.
Oh shit.
Those are two different places.
I'm sorry. I'm tired.
But anyway, it was kind of like an all-star cast. These were three, and then two sort of hangers-on, but three really important guys. And now, how the treaty ended was basically as a tie, like nothing had changed. But that's really important because we got our ass kicked. And I said ass. Ass. I know. We got our butts kicked in that war, and we were really lucky to get out of that.
Sometimes we need just a kick in the pants to move in the right direction.
It was quite the kick in the pants. Anyway, so after the Treaty of Ghent was signed and peace was won, he was appointed ambassador to Great Britain. And his father had served as ambassador to Great Britain before he became vice president. And so, like, obviously during this point in American history as it is today, the most important ambassadors are to France and England. Mm-hmm. So he was, now the top, essentially, ambassador in the United States government. And in many ways, the British took him more seriously than they would have taken anybody else, because you're going into an aristocratic society where family and heritage mean a lot. Mm-hmm. Well, here is sort of the first American legacy, because his dad had been the first American minister. So they kind of viewed him in many ways as like a legit guy, because he combined different things that they could respect: experience, family lineage, this and that. So that was really good. And he spent a lot of his time trying to get American prisoners of war out of the country back home. So that's what he did.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then his next major phase of his life is when James Monroe became president, which was after Madison. He was asked to become Secretary of State. And he was Secretary of State for both of Monroe's terms, so for 8 years. And even today, most Americans know that the Secretary of State is by far the most powerful and influential cabinet member.
And the worst place to go on a Saturday afternoon.
That's a different thing.
I know. Secretary of the State is hella important.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes when presidents announce their cabinet,
they're like the first.
The big announcement is always the Secretary of State.
Yeah, we don't care about the HUD secretary.
No, not really. I mean, they're important, but it's not like a major deal, right?
Yeah.
Well, back then, actually, the Secretary of State was even more important because the vice presidency was far less important than it is today.
So was Secretary of the State almost an equivalent?
Essentially, yeah. And especially since the precedent had sort of been set that the heir apparent to the sitting president was the Secretary of State, because James Madison was the Secretary of State of Jefferson, and Monroe was the Secretary of State of Madison.
I'm hearing a lot of president names thrown around here.
Right. And even Jefferson had been Secretary of State under Washington. So he had that experience.
And Washington was Secretary of the State under nobody because it didn't exist.
Yeah. So it was even more important back then, both in terms of like a real power issue and because of sort of the political lineage kind of a thing, or precedent. And also back in those days, they had more of what's called a cabinet government. So like now the cabinet meets somewhat frequently and they sometimes make decisions, but really the president's in charge.
Yeah.
Well, for the early parts of the Republic, yes, the president was in charge and had the final say, but the cabinet often made decisions as a body. And very rarely would a president overrule their cabinet.
Yeah.
So the cabinet was, in a way, more important back in the day than it is now.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so as Secretary of State, I mean, again, his appointment made so much sense because he was the most experienced American diplomat by far.
Oh, for sure.
And as the lead diplomat of the country, the Secretary of State, and also they knew that if foreign governments got a letter signed John Quincy Adams, Secretary of State, people would go, "Oh, I know him,
Johnny."
Yeah, it wasn't just like Bill from Kentucky or something.
No,
you know?
it's like John effing Quincy Adams.
Yeah, I mean, like his name had gravitas in comparison to any other American.
It had weight to it.
Exactly. And he had many, many successes as Secretary of State, which actually hurt his presidency, as we'll get to. So, the British-American border with Canada had not been fully set. There was a lot of problems. And even after his stint as Secretary of State, there were still more things to work out.
Were there problems with that until maybe like the past 100 years?
I mean, basically, nah. I mean, they'd pretty much been settled by like the 1840s.
Okay, so 200 years.
Yeah, I guess.
Give or take, 150.
I guess, yeah.
I don't know why that matters.
Yeah.
It matters to me.
Well, like whenever you hear about the U.S.-American border, you often hear about the 49th parallel. Mm-hmm. So like if you look at a map of North America, there's that long string once you get past the Great Lakes of that long gentle curve that goes to the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, it dips a little bit, though.
Yeah, but that's generally how it is, right? That's the 49th parallel. Mm-hmm. Well, Adams set that 49th parallel as the border between the United States and Canada.
That makes sense, though.
Yeah.
Except for Michigan.
Right.
But we're weird here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, generally bodies of water are often good, clean borders.
Yeah, that's very true.
But when you go to that stretch of the Great Plains and Rocky Mountains,
you got to have something.
You need to have like an imaginary line.
Like there's no mountain ranges. There's no lakes or bodies of water, or oceans or rivers.
Yeah. So you need a
lagoons.
good, long stretch of line, imaginary line. And that's what he said.
So that's why the line's so smooth.
Yeah.
What didn't John Quincy Adams do?
Oh, there's a lot of things that he didn't do.
Like drive a monster truck.
He never drove a monster truck. He would have liked to, though.
Oh, I'm sure he would have. Who wouldn't?
I mean, you'll see that he would have. And then he also settled the Florida problem. So
what was the Florida problem?
So basically during this period, during the French Revolution, Spain had been invaded by the French. Mm-hmm. And during this time, a lot of the Spanish colonies, so most of South America, Latin America, rose up in revolt. You might have heard of Simon Bolivar.
Nope.
He's like, you could call him the George Washington of South America.
Sure.
So he led the armies of liberation in South America, and the country of Bolivia is named after him.
Oh.
Yeah. But anyway, so there were many people saw that Spain was weak, and they couldn't hold on to a lot of their colonies.
Sí, Spain es muy weako.
Okay.
I forgot the word for weak in Spanish, so
Yeah.
I would just said, yeah.
And Florida was always kind of like the backwoods of the Spanish possessions, and they didn't really keep an eye on it a lot, and it became like a haven for pirates. Yeah, I know. Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah. I apologize to anybody who was listening to headphones with that.
And so Americans were getting sort of ticked off about Florida being this like lawless thing on the side of its border.
It's like the Wild West, but for the pirates, it sounds like.
Yeah. And then, there were people that just wanted to, had bloodlust for land. We just want more territory, blah, blah, blah.
I want our land.
Right. And so the United States was itching to buy Florida from Spain. And the other problem with Spain that it had is that Spain didn't recognize the legality of the Louisiana Purchase.
Why not?
Because...
Did they? Well, they probably didn't have to, did they?
Well, kinda. Because Spain, during the French Revolution, became kind of like a puppet state for a little of the time of France. And France kind of forced Spain to hand over Louisiana territory to the French. And then the French realized they didn't want it anymore, and then they sold it to us. So the Spanish, after Napoleon was overthrown, the Spanish government sort of treated it as if the French never had the right to sell Louisiana. It'd be kind of like if you felt like that you stole my television and then you sold my television to somebody else. I would go to the cops and go, yeah, but he wasn't his television to sell.
That was my TV to start with.
Right.
Well, now I know not to steal your television.
Right. And so that was a big issue, right? So eventually they signed the Adams-Onís Treaty. Onís was the Spanish minister to the United
just
States.
naming him after the dudes who made it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that transferred Florida to the United States and set the boundary of Louisiana. So Spain basically said, yeah, you get Louisiana. And that doesn't sound like a big deal, but it kind of was.
With how big Louisiana was at the time, that's a huge deal.
Well, and basically you take the state of Louisiana up through like the Texas border around Oklahoma, over to like Idaho, across Canada.
That is
to the Great Lakes.
That's a huge chunk of the Midwest.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically the central part of the country.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, they figured out the boundary, which would later become the boundary with Mexico, actually very soon after that, because Mexico became independent after that.
Very interesting.
Yeah. But then probably the most famous foreign policy achievement he achieved, no one knows, or at least lay people don't know, that it's his accomplishment, which is the Monroe Doctrine.
Most people would think that's Monroe.
Well, because he was president when it happened, but Adams came up with the idea.
I actually knew that was JQA. So
Yay! I'm giving you a high five.
That was a voluntarily given high five?
Yeah.
That never happened.
I'm very proud of you.
Mark has only voluntarily high-fived me once. First time, his car hit 100,000 miles. We high-fived over that.
We did. I forgot about that.
The second time was just now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
Oh, and where and when did you know that? How did you know
College.
that? Okay, well, hey, that was worth something.
Yeah. Yeah, I took a few history classes.
Yeah, and as many people know, the Monroe Doctrine was basically a foreign policy plan of the United States, was to keep out of basically European affairs, to stay neutral, but at the same time try to limit European interference in the New World. And while that doesn't sound super fancy,
it's important.
It was. I mean, and part of Adams' reasons was he saw the destruction of the French Revolution and the French Revolutionary Wars. And part of that destruction was caused by the constant shifting of alliances. And he said, look, the United States is a young and weak country. We are not willing to spend the money to build up a large navy or army, so we can't protect ourselves with that. So let's not get entangled with unnecessary wars, or at any war at all, really, if we can avoid it.
Which is just generally a good rule of thumb in life in general.
It is. And then also, this is another thing that Americans have kind of forgotten, is that after the French Revolution was over and Napoleon was defeated, there was something called the Holy Alliance, which was Russia, Austria, and Prussia, and they're sort of and later France, the monarchist France, and they basically decided that if any rebellion broke out in Europe, like any democratic government broke out in Europe, would be to put it down as soon as possible.
Why is that?
Well, because these countries were run by kings and upper crust people.
We don't want that.
No. And, lords and ladies and all those idiots. And, people who thought they were better than everybody else.
Tell us how you really feel, Mark.
Well, these are enemies of free people.
We want freedom.
Exactly.
We're American.
Yeah. And there was a lot of worry that the Holy Alliance would eventually go across to the New World and reestablish European control over Latin America.
Which might have done.
Which they might have done. And the other worry was, and then they might come for us.
Which is even bad.
Because we were the start of all this.
Yeah, we don't want part of that.
Right. And so part of the idea of the Monroe Doctrine was, if we're telling Europe we won't interfere with you, don't interfere with us.
No, we'll just be ourselves.
Right.
You do you, we'll do us.
And so the other part of the Monroe Doctrine was, we will resist all European efforts to reestablish colonies in the New World. and that basically was the foundation of American foreign policy until World War One.
Yes, it was.
So for 100 years, essentially.
Which is, he set the course of 100 years worth of our country.
Yeah, pretty big deal.
That's a good chunk, almost half.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, we're what, 150, 250?
Yeah,
So
about
100 years.
Yeah,
That's a third.
it's a big deal.
That's crazy.
It's kind of found like basically if you're taking any class about American foreign policy, the first word you hear essentially is Monroe Doctrine.
Yeah, I literally took a U.S. history class from post-Civil War to now, and Monroe Doctrine was first day of the class.
Yeah, it's basically heard all the time.
Yeah.
You'll hear it discussed in modern politics today, like, people who are, for instance, against like the U.S. involvement in like the UN will say like, oh, we should follow the Monroe Doctrine, blah 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 blah. Yeah. But then let's skip ahead. So he had a very successful stint as Secretary of State for 8 years, and then when the 1824 election was coming up, he was considered to be one of the favorites.
Who did you run against?
He ran against 3 other guys. Andrew Jackson, Crawford, and Clay. And remember Clay from the diplomatic team.
The guy who loses all the time.
Yeah. And he lost this time.
Spoiler alert, Mark. Jeez.
Yeah, I know. Spoiler for something that's almost 200 years old. But basically how the election turned out was Adams got most of the Northeast. And Clay got most of what was called the West at the time, but that's like Kentucky, Illinois.
So Midwest.
Essentially. Crawford and Jackson split up the South and part of the middle part. So like New Jersey, Pennsylvania, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But Jackson got the most votes. He got basically 151,000 votes.
Did the Electoral College play into this?
Yes, it did. So let's just do Electoral College.
Yes, that's something that not a lot of people understand.
Right. So Jackson won 99 Electoral College votes. Adams got 84. Crawford got 41. And Clay got 37.
Can you do a brief overview of the Electoral College for those of us listening who are not quite familiar with it?
Okay, so the Electoral College is technically how the president is elected in most circumstances.
Yes.
So
most recently, last year. 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
2018.
Technically it's always the case with a few exceptions. And this is one of the 1824 election is one of those circumstances. So basically what it means is that each state is proportional electoral votes based upon their congressional representation. So
which is determined by the population, correct?
A population, and then so you get X number amount based on your population, which is like the House of Representatives, and then each state gets 2 from the Senate. So the minimum you can have is 3. So like Wyoming has 3
because nobody lives.
Because nobody lives there. It's like less than 600,000. So nobody.
Well, less than 600,000.
Yeah, and not very many people.
No, you can go to a metal show in Europe and see more people than that.
Exactly. So that's how, and then the Electoral College technically votes for president based on that. Now, this is still the case now, but much more the case back then, that each state kind of determined how it allocated electoral votes in different ways. And that's something to keep in mind. We won't get in the nitty-gritty of that, but it was different in different places. But anyway, so you notice that Jackson got the most, then Adams, then Crawford, then Clay. Well, just like you even hear today that in a presidential election, you need a candidate needs to get more than 270 to win. Mm-hmm. Well, no one of those people won enough to be declared president automatically.
Was it because there was 3 people running?
Well, there were 4.
4.
That was part of it, yeah. And so what the provision in the Constitution is that the top 3 vote getters go to the House. And then the House votes as states. So you don't win electoral votes anymore, you win states. And whoever wins the most state delegations wins. And so that took Clay out of the running.
Because not enough states wanted him.
Not enough states wanted him.
I would want him.
He came in 4th. Yeah, you would have.
I'm sure I would have.
You would have liked him. Now, Jackson, again, I am not making any modern political points.
We try to stay very politically neutral.
But a lot of people in the political establishment viewed Jackson as unstable, uneducated, and a dangerous man.
Did he want to make America great again?
He did. And often, because one thing why people thought this is he barely could read. And also he had a habit of killing people.
That's a bad habit.
Yeah, he kind of had a habit of killing people and disobeying orders. And when you're a general, it's kind of important to follow orders.
To follow orders and not to kill people.
Right. Well, he liked to do that. And he also had a huge temper. And his sort of definition of what was right or wrong was based upon who or what was opposing him or supporting him.
So he had like no morals. He was just like,
well, his morality was based on who was for him or against him.
Yeah, it's like, I want what I want. If you're with me, cool. If not, you're going to die.
Right. And again, we are making no modern political points.
Well, history does repeat itself, though, because
kind of does.
The crazy people do make the biggest waves in the water.
Sometimes.
And then people feel like they have a voice that's not being heard. Someone does hear them. They come out in masses. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We've seen this happen before. We honestly probably will see this happen again.
Of course. And but one thing to keep in mind is that Clay and Adams belong to the same political faction within the Democratic Republican Party. They were both nationalist Republicans, so they were interested in more trade, a more powerful federal government.
So 2 people from the same party ran against each other.
Well, actually 4 people.
4 people. So
all 4 were in the same party.
So this is like Truman, fat guy all over. Or not Truman.
Taft and Roosevelt.
Taft and Roosevelt, yeah.
Yeah. So Clay and Adams were politically aligned, but Clay was a Westerner, meaning Kentucky, that kind of thing.
I'm down ways.
Yeah. And then Adams was from New England. And then Jackson and Crawford were Southerners. So they were like 3 parts of the country represented, but then Crawford and Jackson were definitely what we would call states' rights Democratic Republicans. So they were on opposite ends of the party, plus different sections. So basically, if Clay wasn't running, the person he would have voted for was John Quincy Adams. And if John Quincy Adams wasn't running for president, the person he would have voted for was Henry Clay.
Okay.
Right? I mean,
that makes sense.
That's just how it would have been.
Yeah.
Well, when it was clear that Clay wasn't going to be, wasn't in the running, because again, it narrowed it down to the top 3 candidates. Basically, Adams went to him and say, if I win this thing, I'm going to name you Secretary of State. And why wouldn't he? They were politically aligned. They had experience together. Clay had experience as a diplomat. It was kind of a match made in heaven.
It makes sense.
Yeah. And also, think of what a lot of political opponents do. And again, within recent history, think of like the Obama administration. Who did Obama name as his Secretary of State?
Hillary Clinton.
Right. And remember, they ran against each other.
Yeah.
Right. So he brought in someone who was within his party who was a semi-opponent.
I mean, it just makes sense. It'd be like if Hillary became president, like her putting Bernie in there.
Yeah, it would have made sense. And this happens all the time. So they were natural allies. They had differences, of course, but they were natural allies. Well, in the end, Congress voted Adams as president. And he won 13 states, Jackson 7, and Crawford 4.
It's a pretty big margin right there.
Right. Well, this was essentially the first time that this had happened, where someone who didn't win the most electoral votes, actually this is the only time, where the person who didn't win the most electoral votes became president.
Yeah, I can't think of any other time that's happened.
It's the only time. And now, part of this is partisanship, but part of it is also just not understanding things, where Jackson and his followers viewed this as like a betrayal. They viewed this as like, wait a minute, I won the most votes, so that means I should be president. Well, no, that's not the rules. Again, I'm not making any modern political analogy.
We are just
whatsoever.
We are just analyzing
not
the politics.
If you remember the most recent primary elections.
Well, not even
where certain candidates did not understand the process.
Which Yeah, I mean, that happens. And then
Well, so people began to accuse Adams and Clay of having a corrupt bargain. They pictured a scene where Adams sneaks through Clay's window and speaks into his ear and says, "If you vote for me and use your influence in Congress and make me president, I will make you Secretary of State." Yeah. And that is not true at all. No. I mean, it's somewhat true in that those events did happen.
But he really climbed through his window.
No.
Spring sweet nothings.
No. But I mean, the events of, yes, Clay did become Adams' Secretary of State, and yes, Clay did throw his weight and influence behind Adams, but he would have done so regardless.
Yeah, I mean, they're very similar ideologically.
Yes. And they weren't like buddies, but they were people who could talk and work with each other.
They could coexist with each other and be productive while coexisting.
And then here's another thing. None of this would have happened if the 3/5 clause had never been enacted. And the 3/5 clause was a portion of the U.S. Constitution, which is one of the most destructive influences in American history. The 3/5 clause was a compromise that basically sweetened the pot so that the South would approve of the Constitution.
Yeah.
And the 3/5 clause states that, well, it doesn't outright say this, but this is what it says, or said, is that we will count slaves to the U.S. population and apportionment in government, but they only count 3/5 of them.
Yeah, so.
Well, but think about it. But they also didn't count those slaves as citizens or people, and they weren't voters. So that meant every Southern voter counted more than every Northern voter.
Yeah, because every slave owner could count all their slaves for what they were doing. And a lot of people had slaves back then.
Well, but that's the thing. Not so many.
Well, not so many, but they had so many slaves.
Well, so if let's say, 4 or 5 slave masters owned, thousands of slaves, they would get only a couple voters would get a lot of representation in Congress.
That's why the 3/5 compromise is so messed up.
It's so messed up. And it basically weighted the power towards the South for about 90 years.
Until the whole slavery thing got abolished.
Right, until the Civil War.
So that's a big chunk of U.S. history.
Right, and actually several occasions, even before he became president, JQA sponsored constitutional amendments to abolish the 3/5 clause.
Which shouldn't have even been there to start with.
It shouldn't have been. But this is going to be a slight tangent, and maybe this will be an episode in the future.
Well, we like Mathom has previews.
Yeah, but if you look at how the South treated and interacted with the rest of the country, it very much resembles an abusive relationship. And
expand upon that. I do understand I understand where you're going with this, but expand upon it.
All right.
Anyway.
So an abusive relationship could be like, if you don't choose to go to this restaurant, you don't love me anymore.
Yeah.
Or if you don't do this, we're going to break up. Or if you don't do this, I'll do that. It's constantly threats. Mm-hmm. It's like rule through abuse and threats, right?
Yeah.
Not through loyalty or convincing people.
Not like saying, "Oh, I'll go to Taco Bell, Mark, because I love Taco Bell and I love you, so let's go to Taco Bell together."
Yeah, and oftentimes with abusive relationships, they also play the victim at the same time.
Yeah.
But anyway, so
I think we should discuss that one day. Though.
I think we might.
That would be a fun one.
It would be. It would really get my blood pressure going because it does. I can feel it now.
My presence just does that to you anyway, though.
Oh, that's very true. But anyway, moving on. One of my favorite things about JQA, and he was a very deeply religious man, but in a different way than you think when you say religious. He was not very interested in theology. Like, for instance, he didn't really care that much about like what we'd call normally religious questions. Like, he didn't believe in like spirits or souls per se or anything like that. He was very interested in it more as a moralizing force. And I don't mean in the modern sense of moralizing. It's kind of complicated if you don't understand theology from that time and ethics from that time. But anyway, he was the first president to swear his oath of office not on the Bible. He swore it on a law book.
He would.
And his reasoning was, yes, I'm a Christian and I'm a religious man, but this oath and my job is to uphold the laws of the land and to improve the laws of the land. So I should swear my oath on a book of laws.
Separation of church and state.
That's part of it. But it's like that to me like really defines his character of like how he views things.
Yeah, that's really admirable.
Yeah. And now we're going to get to the part where he's both a giant failure and a huge success, because he laid out a extremely ambitious plan. Now, for contemporary listeners, this was scandalous. Like, people are going, these are crazy ideas.
Ooh, scandals.
And this is why he's so amazing, is that if I listened to things that he proposed, you would go, yeah, duh. So, like, these are the things that he thought would be a cool idea.
Shoot.
He wanted to build roads and canals,
I love roads.
scientific establishments,
Science is cool.
universities,
I enjoy universities.
naval academies.
Not opposed to that.
Right. And do we
different-
have a naval academy? Yeah, we have Annapolis.
We do.
Do we have roads that connect the states together?
That's how you got to my house.
Yeah, and we have the highway system.
Yeah, that's
Right.
The highway system's a wonderful thing.
We have canals all over the place. Now, you could kind of count canals as sort of the past equivalent or the modern equivalent of highways.
I mean, more
and things.
important back then than now, but the sentiment still stands.
And then later on, like the Erie Canal, which connected the Hudson River and thus the Atlantic Ocean to the Great Lakes, is one of the greatest achievements of America, and actually helped populate the Midwest, the Great Lakes region, led to the Industrial Revolution in America.
That was one of the most important stretches of water in the history of our country.
He wanted to establish state universities.
Which is awesome.
So basically, universities help funded by state governments. We have things like that, like Michigan State University, U of M. Basically, any college that isn't a private school is a state university. Mm-hmm. Think of how awesome those are. That's what he wanted to start.
Yeah.
This was viewed as like, that's nuts. Why would anyone want those things? The federal government has no business doing that.
Why would we want to make our population smarter? And
Why would we want to be better?
Right? Why do we want to better ourselves for the nation?
Yeah.
Because that makes so much sense. We don't want to better ourselves.
No. Yeah. Why would we want to do this? And, and he was really pushing the future, because what he realized was the United States wasn't connected enough. And he was truly the sense of a nationalist, where he wanted what was best for his country, and he wanted his country to be the best.
I could see him doing well in today's political climate.
See, this is the thing, is that this is a guy that would not have kissed no damn baby. Think of all the politicians. Like, it's like if their politician was walking to do a speech, and then they're walking the line, shaking hands, and then some mom or dad holds up their kid, and then they kiss the baby and take a picture and look how cute.
But why would you want to do that?
I don't know, but that's a thing. He would have looked at you like, really, I'm not doing that, and he would have walked.
Because the man has self-respect.
Yeah, so we would have looked on him as cold, aloof, and boring.
Look who our president is now, though.
Right. And,
just saying.
And one of my theses of life is that the person you should listen to is always the boring one.
Yes.
Because the boring one is never trying to cheat or lie to you. Almost never.
Why do you think we've been friends this long?
Yeah, I know, right? Because I'm the boring one?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. But anyway, so he laid out this, what was at the time a very ambitious plan. And again, the people who opposed basically anything that wasn't just agriculture, and they opposed the expansion of the federal power, and they viewed this as like this threat, and he's this crazy person, and he's a monarchist, and which is hilarious. But anyway, his opponents said, oh, you only care about the Northeast and manufacturing and active government, and opposed slavery. Well, every other president before then had been the opposite. They had been mostly Southerners. They had been mostly favored farming. They had mostly favored inactive or weak government. And they had either supported slavery or been indifferent to it. He was the opposite of those things. And the only president that was fully qualified for those was his dad.
He sounds like a total game changer.
And he and his dad were the only Northerners out of the first 6 presidents.
What about the 7th?
Well, that would be Jackson, who was a Southerner.
What about the 8th?
Martin Van Buren, who was a Northerner from New York.
Okay, so the first 7 then.
But Martin Van Buren from New York, so a Northerner, but he was politically aligned with the South.
Damn it, Martin.
Yeah, I know. Little Van was...
Little Vanny B.
Because he was kind of a short guy. But anyway, he also had a plan. The United States was invited by the other countries that had recently won their independence from Spain to form a kind of like ad hoc United Nations of the New World. Essentially, it was called the Panama Council, Panama Congress. And basically the idea was everyone send ambassadors to this thing and sort of go, hey, look at you, you're a new country, Colombia.
So it's like League of Nations before they tried to do that.
Yeah, and this wasn't like supposed to be like a military alliance or anything. It was just sort of, hey, we're all new here. Let's have a meet and greet.
Say, oh, hi.
Right. Well, he was like, this sounds like a good idea. Let's send some guys to this.
Why not?
And they approved it. But then his opponent said, no, we're not funding it. And tried to block it because they didn't. There was a lot of reasons, but part of it was just that whole partisan thing of what, again, if you propose a puppy is cute bill, you oppose it because you're...
Because cats are better.
Well, no, cats are definitely not better.
My cat disagrees with you.
Well, it's a cat. But anyway, during this second half of his administration, he didn't get a lot done because a huge sort of Jackson supporters swept the Congress and basically blocked everything.
It's hard to get stuff done if your Congress isn't backing you.
Right. And so then when the election of 1828 came, the writing was pretty much on the wall, and he knew he would lose, and he did. He lost pretty bad. So Jackson won every state except New England, the New England states, and Maryland, and about half of New York, because New York kind of split its electoral votes at the time. And his vice president abandoned him and ran with Jackson. Because Calhoun, and this is maybe another podcast another day, I'd say Calhoun, John C. Calhoun, is America's greatest villain.
I think we should expand upon that one day.
We will.
You're just getting all kinds of previews.
He does. He also looks like the Beast from X-Men 3. Look him up. It's totally true.
I didn't like the Beast from X-Men 3.
Look up John C. Calhoun and the Beast, and you'll see what I'm saying.
Why are you making me think of X-Men 3?
I'm sorry. Actually, the Beast in that part was one of the better parts of that movie.
He was fine, but God, that movie. I'm glad, ADD moment, I'm glad that doesn't count anymore.
Yeah. And here's another part where I am not making any modern political statements at all. But one of the things that Jackson ran on was that he was tired of political elites running the country, and he wanted to bring in regular folk. And he wanted to, possibly empty a pool of corruption in the country.
Maybe a certain swamp, potentially?
Possibly, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So what happened is that he brought in, Jackson came in and basically fired almost every single civil servant in the government, and then filled it with people who had supported him in the campaign. And basically started something which is called the spoil system. And the spoil system started with the Jacksonian presidency and basically lasted until the early 20th century, until we had modern civil service bills. And how the spoil system worked is, every time a new president or a new party came into power, basically everyone in the federal government, so like whether you were a post office worker or you worked at the docks.
Maybe a library employee.
Maybe. Well, I mean, if you worked for the government. If you worked in the State Department, if the War Department, basically anyone that wasn't in the military, essentially, who was paid by the federal government, you were fired, and then you were replaced by party operatives. Sometimes it was people that just happened to donate a lot of money to you, to your campaign. And remember, campaigns in these days were really crude, but it's still...
They did what they could with what they
had. So basically what did is that Jackson partly run on an anti-corruption campaign and then became way more corrupt.
I am noticing some parallels.
Do you?
Yeah.
How interesting.
No political opinions.
Right.
But that's what's happening
and basically
right now.
Jackson ran as the anti-corruption candidate against the least corrupt, probably, American politician in history.
In Jaqua.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of incredible. It's a way that politics and partisanship can twist the truth 180.
Yeah, well, Party before country, man.
Yep. And again, remember, Jackson is a guy that runs on only it's you against me. And like that's his only barometer of anything.
Did he wear a really shitty red baseball cap?
No, he didn't.
Just curious.
Well, and I just want to point, I've been hard on Jackson, but the person who Jackson could be compared to wishes they were Jackson. Jackson did a lot of harm, but he at least did some good too.
He did things.
Yeah.
Politically.
I mean, mostly militarily. Like he won the Battle of New
whatever.
Orleans, which is good. But anyway.
He was semi-productive in society.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Now, you might think, okay, John Quincy Adams had been senator, diplomat to many countries, secretary of state, and president. What do you think it's time for him to do?
Go to Disney World.
Go to Disney World. Retire, right?
Yeah.
With one exception, 2.5 exceptions, every single president has retired. You know, they've been Jimmy Carter and started building homes, or, you know, just go home and write their memoirs.
Yeah, write a book, make the rest of their income off of a book.
Yeah, go into quiet retirement. That's what everyone had done. Oh, I forgot one more thing. Sorry, I have to go back.
Yes,
this is very important.
Let's go back. We'll go back.
Okay, so in 1826...
Oh, we're going way back.
No, just a couple years.
Okay, I forgot what
The
year
United
it was.
States celebrated its 50th anniversary, right? Because it
Turned
declared
50.
itself independence in 1776.
Basic math says 50.
Right. So John Quincy Adams was president during the 50th anniversary. Well, on July 4th, 1826,
50th 4th of July.
50th 4th of July, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson died the same day.
Damn.
Right. And they were the two most important members of the Second Continental Congress that voted for said Declaration of Independence.
Mm-hmm.
Jefferson wrote the thing, but really it was Adams's thing. Like he was the driver behind it.
Yeah.
And then also the son of John Adams was president at the time.
Very important family.
It was seen as like this event of them dying and then John Quincy being president. It was sort of seen as this miraculous thing. Mm-hmm. It was almost like people saw it as like a sign from God that he favored the United States.
Yeah, it almost seems like a passing of the torch.
It does.
It's like really symbolic.
And I also love that Jefferson's last words were, "Is it the 4th?"
Damn.
And Adams's words were, "Jefferson survives." Those were his last words. Actually, he outlived Jefferson by a couple hours. But
Shout out
it's so
to
cool, right?
That is really cool.
Really cool. But anyway, that was just the
That's
thing
just
I
an
couldn't
example
let go
of
by.
life having a funny way of working out in important
It
moments.
sounds like it's written in a novel or a book
does.
or like a movie or something, right?
The world is a strange place sometimes.
It is. So anyway, Adams in 1828, it turns in 1829.
Starts retiring.
Starts retiring, sits down. What am I going to do? He goes home. He's lived in Washington or outside the country most of his life. Goes back to Quincy. And sitting at home. And then in 1830, he gets a knock on his door. And it's some local politicians from Massachusetts.
Who were these politicians?
They were just random guys. You don't need to know who they are.
They didn't matter. I was like, oh,
No, it's not important to the story.
I was like, oh, these people are going to matter.
And they ask him if he would run for Congress.
So he becomes a congressman, more or less.
So he became a congressman.
Because why the hell wouldn't he?
And there were some people who said, including his wife and his son, Dad, it might be beneath the dignity of a former president to run for Congress because that was lower on the totem pole. And Adams said, no office that the people of my country would ask of me is ever below me.
Damn.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah, I'm so classy. I'm going to put you in your place.
Yeah, it's bad respect for that guy.
Yeah. And this guy's not a young man anymore.
No.
And so he goes to Congress back again, and he served in Congress from 1831 to his death in 1848.
So he just couldn't sit still.
He couldn't sit still. And in many ways, what's kind of amazing is that this part of his life, and I know I'm going on, but this part of his life is his most triumphant, is when he's serving his lowliest post.
But he's doing it with the utmost dignity and class he could.
Oh, definitely. And during his stint in Congress, he gained the nickname, because nicknames are very common in these days, Old Man Eloquent.
I like that.
Yep. And he Now, he also, this is the crazy thing. He became a member of Congress while his opponent that he lost to in the presidential election is president. And
Damn.
he's in Congress.
That's just like a big FU, man.
In a way. And
Like, I'm back.
and his congressional career is, again, you kind of have to know a lot about antebellum America to get a lot of this, but he opposed the nullification crisis, which was sort of the lead up to the Civil War, but it took place during the Jackson administration, so decades earlier. But basically, South Carolina said, any rules that the federal government passes that we don't like, we're just going to nullify them and not pay attention.
Damn.
Yeah. So basically, that's sort of like saying, I don't like red lights, so I'm just going to drive through them if I don't want to. Stop.
That sounds like our current presidential administration.
But see how horrible of an idea that is?
Yeah.
Well, and that's kind of what eventually led to the Civil War, was the South being this abusive, basically, partner in this marriage.
Yeah, it sounds like just a spoiled child who doesn't fit when they don't get what they want.
Exactly. And again, the South already had all the advantages of the 3/5 rule. Most of the presidents were Southerners or Southern sympathizers.
But when you want power, you keep getting more and more until you lose it all.
Right. And so he helped oppose the nullification crisis. He opposed the annexation of Texas because he felt, first of all, again, there was no acquisition of major territory in the Constitution. Plus, he also opposed the expansion of slave territory, which he knew Texas would be. And actually, that's where he sort of got his laurels, is fighting what was called the slave power, which are Southern slave owners and their Northern toadies that controlled the government through most of the antebellum America. And they were called slavocrats, was sort of their, thing they would call them to screw with them. And in fact, he became so annoying to them because he would always bring it up and give speeches and calling out on their bullshit, that they eventually passed what was called the gag rule. And the gag rule was that the Congress would not discuss any anti-slavery petitions or speeches at all.
Just because they don't want to?
Just because they didn't want to.
Because they don't want to lose their slaves.
Well, that's part of it. And part of it was Northerners that didn't necessarily care about slavery one way or the other, but they didn't. It was sort of like, when you have family over and you have to remind each other not to talk about politics or religion?
Yeah.
It was kind of that. It was like, not talk about it. It just causes trouble. That kind of thing.
It's more trouble than it's worth.
Right. And so there were a lot of, especially Northerners and some Southerners too, that felt that way. No good can come of discussing it. It'll only cause problems.
But it's a problem that had to be solved.
Exactly. And so basically for the next almost 10 years, Adams fought almost a nonstop battle against this gag rule. And he would often find ways to tease and mock the Southerners that were gagging him.
Yeah, because he's an old man at this point. He doesn't care.
He's an old man. And what started happening is that the Congress started getting a lot of petitions that would say, let's end slavery in the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., or the territory, parts of the territories, or all these other things, da-da-da-da-da. And a lot of these petitions were being tabled and not even being read. And he saw this as an attack on free speech. He also saw it as an attack on the public's right to petition their government.
That is a blatant ignorance of the American people's wants.
Right. And he says it doesn't matter whether you agree with a petition or not. They have the right for their representatives to read it and consider it.
Because our country is built on being a free country and everyone having a voice to be heard.
Exactly. And this is a case of where you can accidentally, or on purpose in a way, become dictatorial without meaning to. For instance, a lot of the petitions were coming from women's organizations and even children. And there was a brief motion in Congress to not even accept petitions from women or children. And Adams got up and said, no, we have to.
They're still citizens.
Right. And they're like, well, we don't have to. They're not voters. And he says, yes, but they're citizens. And he says, and then, basically people said, well, some people said, oh, so you think that, Congress should listen to women and children? He goes, yes, because children are future, active citizens and voters.
When they're all dead, the children aren't going to be
right
there.
And he said, and women are will help raise these future citizens, and they are fully entitled to, appeal to their representatives, who are us. They have that same right as any man. And so, in a way, he defended the rights of women and children in the American government. And he's probably the first person to ever do that.
Yeah, that just didn't happen.
No,
historically, it's just been a bunch of older European guys just deciding what everyone else gets to do.
Right, and in basically any time in history, children are never mentioned up until very recently in terms of like high-level political matters. And he was one of the very first people to bring it up.
Yeah, because they're like, oh, they're kids. They can't vote.
Yeah.
Screw the kids, man. Oh, don't actually,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. But anyway, so he fought this battle for so long, and he became more popular over the time because people saw him as this very clever person and dogged and passionate. And, fighting, and even if you were not anti-slavery or didn't care about it, you saw it as a battle for free speech. And again, he was one of the most important fighters for that. And you don't really hear about that, but it's an incredibly important thing. And it's really good that he fought that fight because no one else was as willing or able to do so.
Fight that needed to be fought.
Sure was. Anyway, so setting aside that, one of his other important contributions was the Amistad case. And I highly recommend you see that movie, The Amistad. And long story short...
ADD moment.
Yeah.
I think we're going to review that.
Ooh.
Yeah, we are starting a series called the Mathom movie?
The Mathom House podcast at the movies.
Yeah, so we are going to start reviewing movies.
Yeah.
I think that should be one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like to watch that with you and talk about it.
Okay, it's really good.
Yeah, so expect that in the future.
Okay. But long story short, the Amistad case is where a Spanish slave ship was taken over by the slave prisoners on board, and they eventually landed in the U.S. And there was a case of whether the United States would either send them back to Spain, well, really Cuba, because that's where they were going from, and Cuba was part of Spain at the time, or be sent back to Africa. And the government, who was under Martin Van Buren, who was Jackson's appointed successor, wanted to send them back to Cuba. And various abolitionist groups and everything's raised money and got lawyers together and did the case. And they came to, Congressman Adams and asked if he would be part of the legal team. And he agreed, and it eventually went to the Supreme Court. And long story short, they won the case. It's a really interesting story. And anyway, it just makes you cry. It's amazing.
We're definitely going to go more in depth of that in the future.
Mm-hmm. And maybe another one of his most enduring contributions, and again, it's one of those things he's always behind the scenes because it doesn't show his name anywhere, is the Smithsonian. So when Smithson died and bequeathed his money to the United States, he was an English scientist, British guy, and he was wealthy, and he donated his money to the United States to establish a institution for the increase and diffusion of knowledge among men.
The Smithsonian.
The Smithsonian. And a lot of Americans, and remember, Jackson and his group are in the ascendant at this time, and they don't want the government to do anything interesting or cool, except for maybe fight people, right? And a lot of people saw this as like, why is this rich guy giving us money and telling us what to do with it? That's crap. We're not doing that.
Me.
Right. And Adam said, no, that sounds awesome. Remember when I said we should, make an observatory and build universities and stuff?
I want a rich person to give me a museum of cool things to look at in my free time or on vacations.
Yeah. And a lot of people in the government saw this as like, oh, well, let's just take this money and we'll spread it around and blah, 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 and nothing will ever come of it. Well, he fought that tooth and nail. And so in many ways, he's he's like the nurse that delivered, or the doctor that delivered the Smithsonian.
That's why we have such an awesome thing just available to us.
Yeah. And how amazing that has been to not only us, but the entire world of the collection and diffusion of knowledge.
Like one of the biggest wealths of knowledge in the world.
Yeah.
In one centralized location. You could, in theory, walk everywhere to get to it all.
Yeah, it's amazing. And, he really helped protect that. And then in 1846, he suffered a strong stroke that left him partially paralyzed, and he still went into Congress to work.
So he couldn't move.
Yeah, he could barely move, and he went to Congress because the people wanted him.
So how did he communicate?
I mean, he could still talk. He could.
Okay.
He actually, for most of his life, had a hard time writing. His hand shook. And he actually kept a diary for most of his life. It's actually one of the best historical documents of that part of American history, is his diary.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's amazing. But unfortunately, in February of 1848, the Congress was discussing a resolution to honor soldiers that served in the Mexican-American War, which he had opposed because he thought it was an unjust war. And he actually stood up and said no, like when they were going to do a vote on it.
So like a paraplegic man screaming up, yelling.
Yep. And then right as he said that, he had a brain hemorrhage.
Oh, man.
And collapsed. And 2 days later, he died.
I mean, that's what happened.
Yeah. But here's cool. They moved him into the speaker's chamber. Like the Speaker of the House has like an office.
Yeah.
And he died in the Capitol building.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. And it was pretty much the biggest funeral at the time. And a very young congressman was on the committee to make the funeral arrangements.
Who was this young congressman?
Abraham Lincoln.
Damn. I knew it was going to be a big name. I called it. I knew it was going to be someone big.
And again, that's how you get to that Adams served either with or for every single president from Washington to Lincoln.
That's 16.
That's 16.
Well, 15 because he doesn't count
Because he doesn't quite count himself. But yeah.
He did work with himself, I guess.
Right. And if you look at a lot of the things that a lot of future presidents, like Lincoln and the Roosevelts, both Roosevelts, if you look, and even Eisenhower.
Okay, that sounds like a band.
Lincoln and the Roosevelts?
Yeah,
it does. And even Eisenhower with the National Highway System. A lot of the things that he proposed and supported in his life were taken up by those presidents.
His legacy is just still going on.
True, and even like the things that we do and think of are great today, like NASA, that's something that he would have liked and he would have supported. Dope. Yeah, NASA's awesome, right? And think of the things that we do. We have NASA and we have universal education. We have state universities, the Hubble Space Telescope, the Smithsonian.
We're about to get another telescope in space.
Yeah, we are. These are all things that Adams either, he sort of came up with ideas that were proto versions of this. And it's one of those things where, again, as I said early on, God, if we'd only done what he wanted to do earlier.
He just wanted to better us as a race.
Yeah, we would have done it decades earlier. And how cool would that have been?
Super cool. Like, imagine having an old-timey NASA.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we wouldn't have. I don't mean to say that he would have done a space program.
I know.
The idea was the federal government supporting science and industry and infrastructure.
Which, look where we're at now.
Yeah.
Science, industry, infrastructure are what's driving our economy right now.
Right. And the betterment of life. Because he believed that education was the most important thing. And we live in an educated society.
Damn straight, Skippy.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. And that's what he wanted to do. And it's unfortunate he didn't live to see it. And then there's one major last thing we need to talk about. He's just one of those guys that he just came up with things and he said, this is what's going to happen. And then it did. And you go, where was everyone when he was saying this? Because he said that the way to end slavery, because he was never an abolitionist. And you go, wait a minute, that makes no sense. He hated slavery. And the reason he wasn't an abolitionist is that abolitionists at the time didn't care if it was conducted legally or not.
They got pretty extreme in some situations.
Right. And what he said was, we need to do this legally because that's the right way to do it. Mm-hmm. And he also wanted to do things legally to stop slavery, like stop its expansion into the territories, stop the slave trade, all that. But he said, we need to end it legally. That's the only way. But there is another way, and it's legal.
What was the other way?
He predicted that the most likely way for slavery to be ended in the United States was for a pro-slavery faction of the country to try to secede and then fight a war in which they lose. And then the president would have the legal authority as commander-in-chief to confiscate property from the rebels and use it against them.
That's exactly what happened.
That's exactly what happened.
Exactly. He called it.
He called it. And it's like, that what makes you wonder, like, this guy came up with this concept decades before the Civil War. Where were all these idiots in the South that went, wait a minute, didn't somebody say that if we did this thing that we're about to do, that this thing that we really don't want to happen would happen?
But that's expecting radical people to be rational.
I know. And
people are not rational.
Well, he was. And that's Adams was the most boring, rational human being there was.
Okay. For those at home, this is the most heated I've ever seen Mark get about anything.
Well, and this is what annoys me, is that so many people discount rationality. They discount boring people. When boring people are what will save us, not destroy us. It's the passionate people that are dangerous. It's the people that won't kiss the baby. They won't kiss the baby. They won't smile. I showed a picture of John Quincy Adams when he had his photo taken, and the guy basically looks like he's looking at you.
He looks like a hard ass.
He's looking like a hard ass, and he's looking at you.
That actually is probably going to be the little picture that's playing on the video right now.
Yeah, and it looks like he's looking at you, the audience, and going, really? I expected better of you.
Yeah,
that's what he looks like.
I feel like he's scolding me for doing something wrong.
Yeah, yeah, and you kind of go, well, I probably am doing something wrong, JQA.
I mean, if Jaqua says I'm doing something wrong, I may as well be doing something wrong. I'm going to trust him.
Yeah, but as my good friend LeVar Burton would say, Mitchell is showing me the picture.
I just pulled up the picture on my phone. This is a great picture.
It's a great picture. But as LeVar Burton would say, my good friend, don't take my word for it. After this podcast is posted, I'm going to post a list of books and movies that feature John Quincy Adams that I think everyone would love to read and watch and listen to. They're really great.
Yeah, I'm looking at the list right now. I definitely think we are going to talk about the Armistice one.
Amistad?
Yeah, so watch it. Then listen to the podcast when we do it. It's probably going to be another month, give or take, depending on how busy we get. But yeah, I invite you to watch it in preparation for our discussion on it.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to say about our friend Jaqua?
Just that I think we should erect a 1,000-foot statue of him somewhere. I hope they do it in Oakland County, Michigan. That's where I think they should put
maybe
it.
Tri-County area. We could probably make it to Wayne or Macomb pretty easy.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Washtenaw not too far.
I guess not. But I would shoot for Oakland County.
Where in Oakland County?
Maybe around Drake and 12 Mile.
Okay, that's just because for you. We could put it next to the statue for Woodward over on 12 and Woodward.
I'm thinking 12 and Drake.
12 and Woodward Schooler. All right. Thank you for listening to the Mathom House podcast. I've been Mark.
This is Mitchell.
Other way around. We like to confuse y'all. Yep. So watch Amistad Case.
The movie is called Amistad.
Amistad. Yeah, that too.
Directed by Steven Spielberg.
We're also going to
starring Anthony Hopkins.
We're going to try this movie thing out. We also might do a movie called The Room.
Oh right, yeah.
The 2003 movie starring Tommy Wiseau.
So we're going to watch a bad movie and then a really good movie.
Yeah, we're going to watch the bad one first. Yeah, The Room is generally credited as the worst movie ever, but it's the best worst movie ever. So watch that too if you want to do that. Our next one is going to be Star Wars because it's probably going to go up before Star Wars will. So yeah, hope y'all like it. Thanks for listening.
See you next time.
Scoodles.